Good evening and welcome to the April 13th, 2016 Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting. We are opening the session at 7 p.m. First on the agenda is approval of minutes. First for March 9th.
I move to approve the minutes for March 9th.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And secondly, from our meeting on March 23rd, 2016.
Okay, I like yours better.
27? Okay. I move to approve the minutes for March 23rd.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Changes?
Yeah, on page 3, I think it's under, I just actually printed out that one page, I think it's in the superintendent's report about interviews are being conducted for a physics position announcement and the interim director of technology. Both that sentence and the one afterwards, the interim director of technology, we have an interim director of instructional technology. I don't know if it was supposed to be a director of technology or instructional, or I wasn't really clear on the title change and why we have two directors, but anyway, I wasn't sure what it's supposed to say in here, but I thought I would just bring it up.
It should be the interim director of instructional technology.
Which paragraph is that?
It's
Oh.
down here.
Third paragraph.
Middle.
Yeah, right in there.
So it is as stated in the minutes.
I don't have any.
Director of instructional technology, so it should be instructional guide.
And the other one, the job description for the academic center teacher, I think that's academic center coordinator.
Correct.
I'd like to amend my motion to approve the minutes as corrected with
Interim director of
instructional
instructional technology.
technology and the academic center coordinator.
You just have to say, approve as amended,
Approve as amended.
and not correct them. And they'll be posted with the correct.
Any other corrections or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Next on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the student representative report.
Are there no little ones today?
It's the Laney Show.
Okay,
Hello,
Eileen.
how are you? So just some things happening at school lately. By the way, excuse, I just came straight from Easter Toe, so sorry. Okay, to begin, so this week at school is Peace Week, which is sponsored by STAND, Students Take Action Now, Darfur, which is to end genocide, the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, and Student Council. Peace Week is to promote peace and the awareness of human rights in school. So every day we've been doing different activities throughout the week. And tomorrow we have Carl Wilkins, who was the first American to go to Rwanda during the genocide, and he's coming to speak to us all day tomorrow. And we've been really lucky to meet him several times, so it's fun. It's always fun to see him again. And tomorrow night we also have a talent show at 7 o'clock to kind of bring Peace Week together. Also last week, the 8th and 9th graders went to the Celtics game. I think I talked about that a few weeks ago, and they had a great time. So thanks, Mr. Case and Mr. Martin. We had a great program of studies night last night for parents and students. Tomorrow, for all of the seniors, we have Credit for Life, sponsored by Cape Cod 5, where we put in what we would like to do or we think we want to do after college, and they give us a budget and all the expenses that come with being a real adult, and we have to go through that. So tomorrow morning we're doing that. The softball team, the girls golf team, baseball, and tennis teams are all currently undefeated, which is pretty impressive. Also, there is going to be a driver's ed course held over April vacation at the school. And finally, we've had lots of college acceptances and college decisions being made lately, a lot of which were posted online on the Friday Focus. So, yeah, that's all I've got this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Next, we go to recognitions.
Just to tag on to what Lainey just shared in your packet is what Principal Burkhead shared on Friday Focus, which was sort of a list of colleges and universities that our students have gotten accepted into this year that we have, including in that is Harvard, Duke, Brown, Cornell, Emory, UVA, Tufts, NYU, Boston University, Northeastern, Ohio State, WPI, University of Connecticut, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, American University, Amherst, North Carolina State, University of Vermont, University of Alabama, SUNY Buffalo. You have acceptances in the Williams, the Naval Academy, Holy Cross, Mount Holyoke College, Wheaton College, and also the Coast Guard Academy, not to mention many, many more. I think that it's, that list, I think the guidance department have been really pleased with, and I know the students and their families are. It's a bigger, better list than we've seen in past years, and I think it's really a testament to what the academic program is and is continuing to move. So nice job to the students, their families, the guidance staff, and all the high school teachers and their middle school and elementary teachers that poise the students for that success. Also in your packets, to kind of tag on to a report that we had at one of our past recent school committee meetings of the vernal pools that the folks came to talk about was in the newspaper. So this is the newspaper article on that. I know my own daughter came home and excited to talk about what was going on, that she was playing a role in it. She was even pointing out in the newspaper that she was like some little dot of the students as they were stretching the membrane out. But it's really a great opportunity that that they provided, both in terms of this from the environment, but also to have this neat little teaching resource just so close to the school on Chatham Town property.
And off of that, it was also picked up by NPR, the point and broadcast nationally. So that was a full 1 hour broadcast that involved student interviews, staff interviews, interviews with partners in the community, help put that project together. I'll send a link to the school committee so you can actually very well.
And the final recognition I just want to have is recognition / introduction. We talked earlier this year that Steve Latumich, our facilities director, was retiring, and we went on a search to find the next facilities director for Monomoy Regional. And I want to just invite Rick Travers to come up and maybe just do a quick say a little bit about himself. But when it comes to who really runs the school district, between the business manager and your facilities director, you're set. So,
hey folks, I'm not really good at speeches, but I do love to talk. Okay, so I just jotted down a few quick things I have to say because it'd be so important to say these things tonight. And leaving here and thinking I should have said that, that's not one I want to walk away with today. So real quick, I am very thankful to be part of the district. I left the islands. I was working at Martha's Vineyard as a facilities director for a couple of years, and a decade or so. A decade and a half for the Old Rochester Regional School District. So I really love schools. I love what I do. It's a passion I have. Go figure, right? So anyway, I'm very thankful. Just 3.5 weeks into this district, I've been welcomed so warmly, and I mean this with all due sincerity. It's just been unbelievable, and I am so glad I made that move. I need everyone to know that. I'm just very happy to submerge myself into what this district is all about. And I will tell you right now, having worked in a few districts over the years, it is a very special district. And I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg on that. So I want people to know that I'm just very happy to be here. Coming to work in the morning is a thrill for me. So I'm gonna keep that pace going, okay? I've been welcomed so warmly, and I just need to say that by everyone. I'm doing a lot of circulating throughout the schools, learning the facilities, learning the systems that are in these schools, and dealing with a lot of different folks at a quick pace. And everyone from the superintendent down, administrators, have been fantastic. The kids have been great. So I feel very fortunate. I can't emphasize that enough, and I thank you all for that. I did get to spend a day with Steve. It was a great day. It was a crash course on what's going on in the district, and you can imagine. It was a lot to absorb, but Steve and I have a great relationship, at least I feel we do, and I would think he would feel the same way, that he is a phone call away if we get to a point where I may need some advice or maybe some guidance from him of what was going on prior to me coming here. Once again, I've been going through the buildings. I love them. I love what's going on in the buildings. I just need to say that again. And I really look forward to doing my job and being a part of this real special district, and I mean that with all due sincerity. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't know if it's a good omen or a bad omen, but if I recall correctly, I think Rick's first day with us was March 21st, which
That's right.
I think was one of those really ugly days if you're a superintendent where you have to make the snow call on a day when the snow's, I think most of the districts on the Cape were starting to close their doors, and I was like, okay, I think we can sneak this in. We're not going to get much, and I remember I was driving around to each one of the schools at about 5 in the morning, and on the phone with Rick saying, I think we're going to open. I think we're going to open. And I take a shower, and by the time I get out of the shower, there's an inch of snow on the ground, and I show up at work, and I think what I appreciate just seeing Rick on that very first day, there's Rick out there pushing snow with the guys, and just sort of building that collaboration, collegiality the first day. And
Thank you.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
On to reports and discussions. First on the agenda is the Westgate Foundation Grant Awards. Mr. Westgate.
Mr. Chairman, School Committee, it's a pleasure to be here again. With me is Pam Groswald, co-chair, and my wife, Ann Westgate. We had 3 very solid proposals, and I'm pleased to say that while we couldn't grant them everything that they wanted, we were able to make grants that I think will allow them to do what they need to do. The first one is Jennifer Walter, middle school Spanish teacher. We're recommending a Westgate Fellowship of $1,000. For airfare, $800, and acquisition of books and materials to be used in the classroom, an additional $200. Jennifer will combine the study of Peruvian culture and Spanish language with her other love, which is running. I know we have one other marathoner in the building here, but she will literally be part of a group that will be competing to complete a marathon which ends at Machu Picchu. Altitude of about 8,000 feet, I believe. Nothing quite like the Boston one. But she'll also be devoted to learning about the Quechua culture and Inca civilization. She'll provide her students with a greater knowledge of these cultures and of Spanish as spoken in Latin America. She'll also earn graduate credits through the University of the Pacific for this experience and the slide presentations, which she'll be required to present for them, and which she'll also use in presentations to the community here. The second is for Mary Hemian, a high school math teacher. We're recommending a Westgate Fellowship of $1,000 for community outreach based on the action research courses which she'll be taking this fall. Mary provided a very useful evening on March 8th for Monomoy High School parents seeking ways to assist their children in math, and I'd like to read you a comment made by a parent subsequent to that session, which I was at. She afterwards wrote, parents need access to the math books so they can follow what is being taught, make sure material is mastered, and generally have a clue. This is especially difficult when the text is online and the parent doesn't have access except through the child's Chromebook, which is usually with them at school. But it would be a great help if parents could get access to the book. And this is something that was a refrain among all the parents there. But next fall, Mary will be conducting a comparable evening for the parents of 8th grade students. She'll also offer public sessions in Chatham and Harwich for adults seeking to understand some of the new ways in which math is being taught today, which is quite different from the way most of us were taught. This is an exception to our general rule not to fund courses towards degrees, but we find improving math skills critical to student and school district success, and Mary has demonstrated the ability to do this. Finally, Richard Houston, high school social studies teacher, Westgate Fellowship of $600. We're spending a week in DC and Virginia, visiting museums and national parks related to the Civil War and civil rights for the purpose of gathering knowledge and materials for classroom use. Rich will also attend a week-long Civil War Trust Teachers Institute in July, which is being held in Richmond this year. His talk at the Brooks Free Library last week, which some of you may have seen, was a standing room only event. This is the kind of outreach that we like to see the teachers being appreciated in the community and vice versa. And that's one of the things that we hope to accomplish through the Westgate grants. We'll be moving our annual meeting, traditionally held just before school opens, in the fall to late January or early February next year. Fellowship recipients will then be able to include how they have been able to incorporate what they learned during their grants in the classroom. It'll also be a forum where next year's potential applicants can ask questions. So our final request is that you appoint one member of the school committee to join the Westgate Committee as your representative. And then finally, just request a motion to approve these recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any questions?
I think it was me. Can I appoint myself? I think I volunteered last spring, last summer, for it, and I couldn't attend the meeting in the fall. I apologize.
Well, hopefully you will be able to next
Next
January or
January, I put it
February.
on the calendar now. Block a time around it.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to, if that's,
Great.
everybody else is okay with that.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the 3 Westgate Foundation grant awards to Ms. Walter, Ms. Hemian, and Mr. Houston.
Second.
Terry?
I happen, sir, to be able to attend Rich's Civil Rights presentation last Saturday. And we are so fortunate, and Rich is just, as someone said before, just the example of dozens of teachers who have that. But I was so impressed not only with the content, but with Rich, we combine a fellow who is passionate and also intellectual. So when you get that in a teacher, you're way ahead of the game. He captured a standing room audience. He filled us with details about both the civil rights as well as the Civil War locations. And at the same time, you left wanting to hope that there will be another follow-up. So thank you for the follow-up for Rich.
Congratulations to Rich, who's in the background there.
I said that just the way Rich wrote it.
Is there any other discussion or questions? So the motion is to approve the Westgate Foundation grant awards. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good. I would like to thank you, Mr. Westgate, for the continuation of this one. It was great that there was a seamless transition from a Chatham organization to a Monomoy organization. And we appreciate everybody that's on your board that does all the work. It's just, we thank you.
You're welcome. We actually voted about 6 months before either town did, that if the towns did vote for it, which my father was an advocate for a generation ago, that we would like to support the combined efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our reports and discussion is the Chatham Elementary School Improvement Plan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robin Millen. I'm the principal at Chatham Elementary School. So tonight I'm here on behalf of my school council and the Chatham Elementary School Council, I should say. And I'm going to present to the school committee, but also the audience, the proposed Chatham Elementary School Improvement Plan. What I'll do tonight is I'll go through a little bit of the background on the plan and also the process that we went through to establish the plan. I'm not going to go through the plan in its entirety. The committee has a copy of it inside of their packets. There are some public copies here for you as well. There's also some research articles and some other things over there just to support if you'd like to take them and take a look at them. You're more than welcome to them. So to start, I just want to start with a little background. In 2015 in June, I presented with interim principal Adam O'Shea. And we talked about, or he talked about the 2013-2015 plan, which we've been operating over since I started. And then what I presented to the school committee at that time was a blueprint of how we were going to go about learning about the school for me and some of the data, the new data that had come out and things like that. I felt very uncomfortable last June presenting a school-wide improvement plan for a school that I hadn't really taken over yet. So we went through the blueprint. I do apologize to the committee. I was very ambitious in my dates on that blueprint. I told you all the data we were going to collect, all the information we were going to collect. We did do that, but it's taken us a while. So we did operate under the 2015 school improvement plan until April. It's a little delayed, so I apologize. But now I'm feeling a little ahead, so I'll explain that in a little bit. In September of this year, the school council members for the 2015-2017 time period were brought forth. We had a wonderful response, and at this time I just want to thank the school committee, our school council members. Miss Amanda Alton is a parent, Ann Barnard is one of our second grade teachers, Miss Stephanie Goley is another parent, myself, Diane Nash, Miss Diane Nash, she's a parent, Mrs. Kim Robbins is a parent, Mrs. Megan Story, who is here with me tonight for support, is a parent. And then Mrs. Margaret Turco is also a teacher. A little unique to an elementary school, we also included 2 student council representatives. So we have 2 students on our school council as well. They didn't attend every 8 o'clock meeting, but they did come to a couple of the meetings and really discuss particularly like the playground and things like that that really pertain to them. So that's, you've met them, the council has met, the committee's met them, it's Gigi and Christian. But these people have worked many hours on this, so thank you very much. So to start, we pulled together some of data. And some of this data is in my 100-day entry plan that I presented, I think, when I first came on board. It started in July and August. We did a needs assessment. I had opened the building in the summer months 2 days a week for open sessions. I didn't see a lot of people at that time. About 15 community members stopped by over the summer to talk to me, which was primarily a lot of volunteers, a lot of people who spend time in our building, have different programs that they do in the building. I saw a lot of them. I didn't see a lot of other people. But basically when people came in, anytime I could talk to somebody, I kind of drove my data collection on those 3 questions. What are the strengths of the school? What are the areas we might need to improve on? And then what were their expectations of me as a principal? So I took that information and we kind of came up with some themes that emerged. The council said the families, community, academic programs, that was one theme that came across in those discussions. Areas we might want to improve upon was communications, pick up and drop off, accountability. And then expectations for me as a principal was people really kept saying, we really want that small town feel. We really want that small community feel. We want to increase our opportunities for all of our students, and then they wanted me to make sure we develop the strengths, particularly as it went instructional and curricular. So we presented that to the council. Also part of the 100-day plan, I sent out what I called a tag sale to the staff. It's basically a way to kind of do a quick needs assessment to the staff. And there were 3 questions on that. Actually, there were 6, but they kind of revolve on 3 different routines. But the questions are, what are the instructional and celebratory practices that you want to treasure enough to keep? So if you're having a tag sale at your house, those are your things that you don't sell off. Then what are your practices that you want to kind of spruce up, but then keep? And then what are your celebratory or instructional practices that might have been great in the past, but those bell bottoms at some point have got to go, so you sell them off. So there was a lot of answers, and again, on the survey that I sent out, I only had 3 respondents, 3 teachers responded, but as we have gone through this year, I keep going back to these questions and collecting this data, and I'm not gonna read through them all, but a lot of the stuff that came up were small group instruction, Audubon classes, PBIS and community events, again, around those same themes, things that they might wanna spruce up, literacy materials, TAT paperwork, field day, Halloween, those kind of things. And then celebratory practices and instructional ones that need to go, so those were the ones there. Disjointed programs and things came up a lot, schedules, time on learning. And again, I have copies of the slides, and it's also posted on the web so that you can take a look a little more deeply. When the staff came back for their first entry day, convocation day, we did a lot of team building activities, and we also decided, we worked on this question, what do you want to create? And again, this was to build our information about each other, but also to gather some information. A lot of the information you collect as a school comes through these kind of meetings and through some of these interactions, both with the community and other stakeholders. So the staff came together and they actually created a group poem about what they wanted to create. It was a mnemonic. They went through the create word and they came up with things that I said, if somebody flew out of outer space in June and dropped down into our school, what would you want them to see? So these were the key words. I don't know if you know of the Wordle, but when you type into a Wordle, the words that come up the most are the largest. So this was actually the documents. All of this information from this first 100-day plan that I put together was what we first looked at as a school council. We looked at all this information and then we started building off of this type of Wordle. So teamwork, collaboration, engagement, acceptance, respectfulness, appreciative learning, those kind of things. So the next step for us was to really, poor Mrs. Story's going on, huh? Is really to look at the data. Again, we're driven by student achievement, we're driven by our data, and our data comes in many different ways, anecdotal experiences, communications, but it also comes down to kind of this black and white numbers. So this is our park data from last year. It was the first year the district did park. It was an online test. It was grade 3, which is now our current grade 4, and grade 4, which is our current grade 5. And these were our district averages, our school averages, our state averages, and then the park averages. You can see for our current grade 4, we have about 3% of our students for language arts above expectations, 58 at expectation, and then the rest below, and then over on the other side, about the same, 3% at level 5, 38% at level 4, and some is low. What you want to know about anytime you have a new assessment, and there's always an implementation dip. So when we're looking at these numbers, and I can show you, this is grade 4 and now the current grade 5. You want to look at these numbers, but you want to look at these numbers in connection with other data. So some of the other data that we looked at, and I don't mean to be flying through these slides, but is the current, I'm going wrong, is the current cohort and the current benchmarks that we do in school. So at the elementary level, we run the DRA assessments. We run that in the middle of the year in kindergarten all the way through grade 4 at the beginning and the end of the year. And again, here is our numbers. Grade 1 at the beginning of the year was at 45, 58 in mid-year. We'll run them again at the end of the year to see where we're at. The numbers are a little concerning because if I look at them, they do match up to the park data. It's almost hand in hand, especially in grades 3 and grade 4, which is the ones that we were testing. So we had some pretty serious conversations about instruction. We know we're working very hard in the curriculum. We're doing a lot of things that have started through this year. And so we're hopefully looking at making some changes with the school-wide improvement plan, but also just really kind of focusing in. And again, those were some of the discussions that you see in the data earlier. So we mapped our school council got together. We took all this again. We took maybe 3 or 4 sessions just looking at data. And again, it takes a long time. These are hour-long, hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long sessions at 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And we really tried to push forward through those essential questions. What is our fundamental purpose at Chatham Elementary School? And again, we've had lots of discussion with Harwich Elementary School as well. What is our fundamental purpose? What needs our attention immediately? What needs to be improved over the next 1 to 3 years? How will we know what we addressed actually is making those immediate and long-term changes to meet those needs? What is our vision, overall vision for CES as it fits into Monomoy? And then what commitments or assurances can we make that we are achieving this vision? So all of that came together, and we, believe it or not, came up with 4 objectives. And they kind of really nicely fell into place. I feel like Megan should be up here agreeing with me, but they came down to instruction, curriculum, communication, and wellness. And this is where I feel like, okay, we were a little behind. I was supposed to be up here in October telling you what the school-wide improvement plan was, but when we sat down with this, and we then sat down with the strategic plan that has just been adopted, and we overlaid the 2, this is what we came up with. So the internal circles are what we came up with themes for the Chatham Elementary School plan. The rectangles in blue are the school-wide improvement, or strategic plan. So if you look at them, and you'll see in that more formal document with all the steps and the action plans and the rationales, I was able to connect everything. And I know you guys aren't going to see that, but if you look at the more thorough document, you'll see where the rationale was able to fit right into the strategic plan. And that's absolutely what should happen. Our school-wide improvement plan should be driven by the strategic plan, and the strategic plan should be driven by our school-wide improvement plan. So it really fit very nicely. We were doing the happy dance there for a little while. So just before I get into the highlights of the plan, I just want to tell you what this plan is and what it isn't. This plan is a SMART plan, so it's specific, it's measurable, although we now need to talk about the measure and how we're actually going to know the quality of it. Actionable, realistic, and timely. It is also smarter, E&R. It's evaluative and it's revisable. So it's a living document, and I hope that's okay with you. But I think, sometimes we pull plans together and we hit goals much sooner than we thought we were going to, or we come into some roadblock and something happens. So we're going to constantly be meeting. We already have a May 4th date to start, looking at this and starting to evaluate and starting to look through all the things that we need to do. So it's not just SMART. The other thing that the plan is research-based, both our own research, but also others. It's not just an off-the-shelf solutions, and you'll see some of the highlights of that in a minute. 3 of my favorite authors are Fullen and Heath. Fullen writes a lot about education and educational change and educational strategies and things like that. And he says it's one of life's greatest ironies that we're in the business of teaching and learning, yet we very rarely learn from each other. And then Heath always says follow the bright spots. So when we found our themes, we looked for exemplars. We looked for schools who are doing these things well. And we searched and we looked at their action plans. We looked at, the data they were collecting. We looked at how they were measuring. And so, forgive me, I've taken some of those, and we've taken some of those. But we've taken some of those plans and used their steps. If they're doing things well and it's working for them, if it's generalizable to us, we're going to use that too. So this isn't all of our own thoughts. A lot of it is, but it's not all of our own. We did borrow from others. It is built by and for a school learning community. It's beyond a professional learning community. And I know we talk about professional learning communities a lot on our early release Wednesdays. But Epstein's a great researcher also. But she talks about it really should be a school learning, a community that's learning together. So when you look at the full plan, you'll see that there are action steps and people responsible from the fire department, the police department, the town, the the businesses, the school committee, school councils, administrative teams, teachers, students, everybody's involved. So we're all going to be at work, I guess, is what it is. So it's not just built for a professional learning committee or by a professional learning community. The other thing this plan is it is messy. It's messy. It's shifting some of our ideas. It's looking at some of our spaces a little differently. It's, at some point you'll see, we're going to have to really actually physically get into the dirt. So it's messy. It's not going to be a pretty, easy, off-the-shelf, kind of nice and neat plan. We're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. That's where we'll evaluate and we'll revise, but that's what it is. Okay. So here's the plan. So starting with instruction, the goal with the school-wide improvement plan for Chatham Elementary will be to provide students with research-based instruction as an effective means of raising achievement. And again, we have 4 objectives under here. These are just the little tidbits of them. They're much more developed inside the full plan. So the objectives are to incorporate differentiated instruction. They're to align with curriculum maps and frameworks. There is an error. One of the school council members just emailed me that in one part of the plan we're calling them frameworks, and in one plan we're calling it Common Core standards. So we'll go back. It is the maps frameworks which are built off the Common Core, but we'll fix that just so that you know. We also have the objective to provide academic support, which is through, again, in the strategic plan and also in our plan, and continued collaboration. So rather than go through all the action steps, I thought I would just take a couple of the highlights. And this is one of the instructional highlights. I thought it would be a good one to explain the action highlight of the deep learning and the curriculum integration. Second grade has already started since we were a little bit behind, and since the strategic plan has been approved. Second grade is just one of many of our grade levels that have started creating interdisciplinary units. And theirs is on the pollinator program. That's a new science generation framework standard. It's also built off the Common Core and the math standards. It's built under that idea that deep learning really involves communication, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, citizenship, and character. And if you look on the outside of our flower, it's built off a letter, a program by President Obama. We're contacted by him about his national pollinator program. Burpee Seeds is involved. They donated 5,000 seeds. We're working with the National Seashore Park Rangers to develop a co-written unit with them. The students are going to be taking local field trips to the local habitats to collect data and forward to the national government. So they're impacting their community and their environment in some way. They're working with the park rangers and also with the Audubon on engineering pollinator traps. The volunteers are coming in and they marked off a pollinator garden, and then they also have been planting seeds, and they're in our greenhouse. So you can see how an interdisciplinary unit can be developed using the science, the math, the writing, the reading. They're doing closed reading units, closed reading background building through Nancy Boyles in one of her units. So it's a really nice integrated unit. The culmination of this unit is they're going to write to President Obama, and they're going to tell him what they think the impact of this pledge that he has out there to have this national task force. And they're going to give their data and stuff to him. So it's a really nice, and that's what we're looking to develop throughout our building. Oops, sorry, I went too far. So curriculum, this is our second theme. This one is to provide students with curriculum materials and programs that will provide the knowledge, perspectives, and skills necessary for living in a complex, diverse world. Now, if you've been working on a strategic plan, these goals should sound very familiar to you. So the objectives here are to incorporate materials, texts that have multiple representations, multiple perspectives, multiple thoughts, and diversity, including the foreign language instruction and cultural awareness, connections to outside experts, and resources relating to the local and global resources. So there's a lot to this particular objective as well, but we're very excited about one thought in this action plan, well, more than one thought, but this is one that we're really excited about, is a major call to shifting the library to something that's called now kind of a learning commons. This idea is called many different things, virtual commons, different things. Jim Birchfield's been working with us as well on the thought of this. But basically your library inside your school should be your hub of your environment. It should be moving, it should be bustling, it should be flexible, it should be going, people should be using it all the time, and in Chatham Elementary, it's not. Okay, so we need to get that done. I had a friend who is a library consultant come in September. She took 3 days of her own time and came down, and I fed her dinner. But she came in, and there were some things that you just can't pass up in the library. The average copyright date of the books in the library is 1986. There was nothing in the shelves of the nonfiction on Planet. There was a Planet book one Planet book that was published in 1969. So, there was things in there that she took one book off the shelf and she's like, Robin, I can't even put it back. You got to just take it with you. So there's work that needs to be done, both with the text materials and the literacy materials, but also with the digital materials as well. So this shift in this idea of just having a library for a library and a computer lab for a computer lab, we've been talking with Sam over at Harwich too, is looking at this kind of becoming a library and a learning commons model. And I have articles on that over there if you want to read more about it. But right now we have those printed materials there. What the future we hope to have is that there'll be a combination of printed and digital literature resources across those 2 rooms. So it won't just be 2 separate rooms. Right now the library's only open 2.5 days. We would like the library to be open, or the Learning Commons open all day, every day, and actually we would like it to be accessible to students 24/7. So they have access to that, and that's possible. We have the computer software that can make that available. We just need to get it to work. Right now it's a stationary space. We would like it to be a flexible space. We would like classrooms to use it all the time. We would like to be able to move things around, not necessarily have things set up the way they are, maybe look more like this than what it does there, but more flexible space. Separating the computer lab and the library into single classes, putting them into more collaborative spaces and communication and sharing. Changing the idea of the library to include spaces, including maker spaces. I don't know if you've heard of those. Those are where places where kids can just go and be creative and actually make things and create things and engineer things and write about them. Presentation spaces, digital storytelling. I'd like to put the news online, and have the live, a place where kids can have alternate ways to express their learning. Interactive and the safe digital citizenry is part of the program. And then parents as volunteers. To shelf books is all we use parents for right now in the library. I would like to have that space open for the community experts to enhance learning on a daily, everyday basis. And then we would also like to make sure that the students and the community at large use those spaces. I don't know if I missed something. There are some great articles about this, because I know this is a major shift in the idea. So Shannon Miller is an expert in this. There's an interview online, and again, it's posted on the website, and then again, there's articles if you want to learn more about this. Communication is our third highlight. Consistent and frequent modes of communication. We heard this over and over and over again. Communication continues to be a problem. We feel like on the school side of it, the teachers were very clear that they were saying we're trying to communicate, we're sending emails out, we're sending newsletters, we're putting things on the web. But there's some disconnect. We have to figure out a more consistent way to get our message across, and we need to provide those effective forms of school-to-home communications and home-to-school back. Provide updates and information on the safety protocols and the crisis plans, and recruit and organize parent-community health. And so this is what we were thinking. The live broadcasts, Stephen Cass is going to work with me over the summer. Anybody can join me, you're more than welcome, but he's going to come in and help us set up a space so that we can do the live broadcasting for our morning announcements, and then we'll do similar to what Sam does in his building, and hopefully get it up on the web. We would like to, across the district, particularly in elementary, but I know across the bigger district, do a parent university and actually have a catalog that we can give out to parents at the curriculum night, so that they see the class catalogs and the dates of when they'll be held, and the parent forums and things like that. That will help with this math initiative that we have as well, but also have all of the dates so the parents know ahead of time what's scheduled for the year. And then bring back the very important people in schools or the volunteers in public school program, depends on how you look at it, and make sure that we have somebody kind of organizing all of those volunteers that saw me over the summer and all the rich opportunities that we offer to our elementary students during the school year. And then wellness, last one. promote a healthy and safe environment as it relates to overall social, emotional, physical, and academic development to students and staff. Lots of just kind of maintenance type things need to be done. The building that we're in is a 1956 building. It's a great building. It's a quintessential elementary school. It's all one floor. It's got beautiful high ceilings and gorgeous things, but there's just some plant maintenance that Rick and I have already been talking about, and the school council met the other day. And then opportunities to explore, and actually taking our learning outside was a very big goal of ours, you know, looking at our space around our area. We have such a nice location with the fire department there and the railroad museum and the land and things like that. But I think this kind of sums it up. We have the good, the bad, and the swale. So the playground will be a major initiative. I never knew the word swale before I started talking to Dan Tobin. But we have a lovely playscape out there. There's many things out there that are very, very nice. There are some concerns. It is not accessible to all of our learners. It's just not. We've had to replace wood chips, and we've had to replace pieces. Yeah, I don't know if you can see in the middle, that is our teeter-totter. It's gonna have to come out of the ground. We've had the replacement of bolts in it probably 10 times. They just keep sending us larger bolts and they keep breaking. So there's things that have to be done. The fire truck, you know, the fire truck out there, that was broken when it was put in. It hasn't been fixed. Things need to be updated out there. But I think the biggest worry for me, and Mr. Case back there, but that's our field, that sand pit right there. We don't have any irrigation. We don't have any fields. So it worries us. And the swale goes right through the middle of it. So because the swale is like a drainage thing, the town blocked it, I think, or they think. And so the water goes up and over it, and then there's like a river that runs through the middle of the field. And so there's a big divot in the middle of the field. So the children were telling me, they took me on a tour, and they were telling me they get their foot stuck in that all the time, and they hit the divot in the middle of the field all the time. So it's just dangerous, and we need to fix that. So that is one of the key highlights of our wellness, amongst other things. So in the end, this is our school-wide improvement plan that we're proposing to the committee today. It feeds into our school-wide, our Monomoy School strategic plan. It feeds into our mission. It also feeds into our vision. And then our vision feeds into the mission and strategic plan, and then back to the school-wide improvement plan. So Megan is our only school council member here, but Megan, can you just stand up and say hi? Because
Question? Sure.
There's so much in this. That's my first thought is for this 3-year plan, it's a lot, and, you know, everything from the thoroughness of the playground, and very important, very impressive. I love your format that you have for this, and I like the whole process that you went through. The concern or question I have is under culture. Is there going to, when we had done the strategic plan overview, there was something about social skills curriculum. Will there be a social skills curriculum?
so the social skills curriculum, like the district curriculum, will come from Dr. Blanchard's office. And then as you whittle it down into our daily plans, we already have a social skills curriculum. So we do the MARC training, we do all of those type of things.
What training?
MARC, which is the anti-bullying training that the state approves. But we also have inside, you'll see inside the strategic plan, but also inside our plan, the positive behavior implementation system that Chatham Elementary has enrolled already. They've been in it, forgive me, 3 years. Yes, 3 years. And I think they started running that even before then, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They really unrolled that last year with some of the staff members that were there. They have the acronyms done, the shark-like characteristics, all of those things. We have all the pieces to the positive behavior intervention system, but that plan had like 64 of its own goals. So we are working with Dr. Blanchard and Mr. Hine and Mrs. Aldak over at Harwich, and we're working with the May Institute to also get some backbone to that and to kind of relaunch those things, re-own that, get that driven by the staff and by, we have a core team that's going to be trained in June and do all those things, and so that will relaunch with the students this year. However, this year the school, or the student council, is really the backbone of that PBIS, that social skills curriculum. They've been running the community events, they've been doing the sharp-like behaviors at all their events, they've been decorating the hallway with all the social skills of being successful, honest, accepting, responsible, kind, and
All of that sounds like a good piece of the program, but it's kind of like having the field trips for math, without the math teaching in the classroom. For instance, skills streaming is one research-based, how to make friends, how to ignore distractions, how to listen, things like that that are sort of direct teaching, rather, that helps build a culture.
right. So, and that's built into them. Jill Malinowski does a social skills curriculum within her, purview and her thing. And then this type of, actual MARC training, there's isolated lessons that have to be done, and then there's auxiliary lessons that are done by the classroom teachers as well. So there's like that type of curriculum, so there's different, because the social emotional, it's different.
That's the only thing I see that I can say that doesn't have like a line that this happens and then we know that that's accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else looks fabulous.
Yeah, and then the curriculum from the district is also, that's the task force that's been meeting this year too, so that will all come together with that.
Nancy?
I want to agree with what Sharon said in that this is very, very thorough. And I was going through and making notes, and I started out with one, and I was like, oh, that's great, and wrote great, and then I wrote great, and I just kept going through, going, well, there's a really, really great initiatives all happening throughout the whole plan. So I want to commend you guys. This was a lot of work to go through, and I just think that I like the fact that you're not overly ambitious and know that it's not going to all happen in 1 year. And I do like the fact that you're willing and able to go back and tweak things that aren't working and maybe move on past them because you see something that's working really well. So, very good, thank you.
Karen?
I just wanted to say thank you to Robin and Megan and everyone else that participated in this. You guys did a great job. It clearly took a lot of work, it really shows. And I also like the fact that it's agile, for anyone who knows that acronym.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'd echo that, Doctor. You're, one of the criteria you were hoping for, you alluded to a plan that over 3 years might have some messy components. Well, it may, but your presentation was crisp and straightforward, so whatever we as a school committee and the administration and the other schools can learn from this, what a great roadmap. Thank you.
Be a tough act to follow.
I'd just like to say.
They were very tolerant. These guys did a great job.
She's great.
I'd like to just say thank you to Megan and Robin and the others on that group, and just kind of acknowledge for Sam, Bill, and Mark that the bar has been set. And I, in a lot of ways, if we step back a year, I thought that Adam did a really nice job of presenting a school improvement plan for Chatham Elementary and set us in a nice place where we decided that's the format that as a team we wanted to sort of follow and have Robin launch it, and the other schools will kind of come in the upcoming weeks as we close out this end of the year with their plans that will have that same sort of approach. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh,
Around the corner here.
sorry.
I'm not going to repeat what everybody said, but obviously a lot of work went into this, and I think your presentation tonight that summarized it was very, very exciting and very well done. I do have a couple of specific questions. When you were starting off to report the results of the park testing, Can you give us an idea of what the level of participation was?
That is, I don't have that, I can get that for you, though, I don't have that with me. We had at the elementary school a higher level than any of the other schools, but I don't know what it was for Chatham particularly, I can get that for you.
Okay. And kind of following up on what Sharon was asking, you know, there's a lot of euphemisms and you know, and things like that. What is Chatham Elementary School's involvement, if any, in the mindfulness program? I know that obviously has gotten a lot of press lately, and my understanding is that that's been in and out of the Chatham system for some time. And it seems related to the kinds of things Sharon was talking about. I didn't see that up there unless I missed it, but is that program still in effect?
Yep, well, what we're running right now, and Dr. Blanchard can probably speak to it better, is a pilot right now at Chatham Elementary School. So this year, all of grades 1 through 4 are running through an 8-week pilot, which is what the 8-week sessions. So grades 3 and 4 have also already gone through the sessions, and grades 1 and 2 are currently going through the sessions. So there's 20 minutes of classes 2 times a week for 8 weeks. So what we're doing as far as the pilot goes, and we presented this to the families back in October, I believe, is the pilot, we collected, again, some data, like pre-referrals to the office referrals, information like that, pre the mindfulness training, and then post we'll collect that as well, and during, I guess. We're collecting information from the staff, the students, and the parents as to how they feel about it now that the entire community has gone through it except for grade K and pre-K. We've run a parent information session for parents just last week on mindfulness and also what they could do at home to support their children. We had 2 parents, but it was there. We also, so it's there, and so I think, again, that's a curriculum decision. You know, it's the curricular program. So it would be Dr. Blanchard and Scott and you all, because it is a program that costs money as well. So we're collecting that data right now for the district, and then we'll present that to you as well. And then if they make the decision to keep going on something like that, then we'll do it.
So that's great, and I appreciate the fact that you're still collecting the data, but I'm curious as to whether you have any kind of anecdotal indication as to how it's going? Do you have any
Well,
feedback?
I sat in on a couple of sessions, not full sessions. I sat in on one full session. I watched the children and did all those things. They were inspecting at one session a coffee bean and getting mindful on the coffee bean and things like that. I can tell you the teachers are a little bit split on some of the information that I'm getting from them. And again, this is very anecdotal, very preliminary. Sure. The time away from learning is concerning, and the scheduling of it is pretty much their concern. The parents, I heard from 2 of them. We have a few opt-outs on people who have decided to opt out, but 2 of the parents that were at the informational session did very clearly say how much their children are enjoying the program. They're sleeping better at night. They're more relaxed. They like that. Yes, one from that parent, yes.
I am a parent of a child who's currently in the program. I do happen to have a very calm child in general. So from that perspective, I don't know that. From a time out of learning, I may have been a parent who would have opted out just because I feel like for my child it's not necessary. However, I am lazy and didn't. And she has come home, and from what I can tell, is learning a lot from the program beyond just how to remain calm and how to be better behaved, which is my perception of the program prior to having experience with it. Now that she's in it, she's learning a lot about the senses, about things that wouldn't have occurred to me that are part of Calmer Choice. I think she was eating something, I don't know what, something she shouldn't have been eating, I'm sure. And she was like, I can taste it, and I can feel it, and I can smell it, and I was like, where did you learn this? Where is this coming from? And it was coming from that program. So I feel much better about the program now that she's actually involved in it, given what was happening in the media and I was following along. I'm glad I was not paying attention and didn't opt out.
Just a couple of other things about that. One of the teachers remarked that the students are actually using some of the techniques in their writing. So that's one of the anecdotes. And a couple of the anecdotes from the the students themselves they love the starfish breathing, which is where you lay out, you lay down, you lay out, and you put something on your stomach so you can actually watch your breath. So they love that. They all want to lay down in the middle of the cafeteria and do their starfish breathing. Probably not the cleanest place to do it, but they love that. And then the only other thing that I think is really funny, but maybe not, I had a young student in my office to talk to me about some behavior, and she was explaining to me that her hippocampus did not stop, and she went into the fight or freeze mode. That she really should have had her, what is it called, prefrontal cortex, should have stopped that from doing that. And if it had done that and she had been more mindful, she wouldn't have done what she had done to be in my
Boy,
office.
those kindergartners are amazing.
She was second grade telling me about her prefrontal.
This is the same feedback I had. I was like,
I'm not sure if it just gave them an excuse to get out of trouble or what, but they know what's happening in their brain, and that, is a good thing. Then they know what they need to do the next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love these, I'm so glad that Brian brought that up. As you know, I'm a psychotherapist and I see kids from other school districts and parents, and they're all telling me that the kids that start this in elementary school, not quite as successful when they start at middle school, but nothing is. So, these type of things that you're talking about, understanding biology, understanding where their feelings come from and actions, learning about all these choices of words that can easily fit into writing lessons. It's just, and it ties in with our high school risk survey of depression and drugs abuse and all. So I would hope that we would not frame this in the term of time out of learning. To me, this is time very well spent in learning, and I can't say every single lesson. I'm not knowledgeable about that.
And I don't have enough data.
But a program like this is very specific social skills that are useful for life.
So stay tuned on that one.
I just wanted to say anecdotally, my son also is a very calm child, and I didn't think he really would need this, but I figured it wouldn't hurt him, and I wouldn't opt him out. I think it's a very good thing. But two things that I've noticed. One is that when he was starting to get upset at one point, he said something about a mindful minute, and I knew exactly where that came from.
yeah, I got that too.
And he calmed himself right down. It was great. And the other thing is that when he comes home from school or when we're talking at dinner, he'll tell me about what's going on in class, and he always tells me the naughty stories. And there has been a huge reduction, and I haven't heard any lately. I'm very disappointed because they're so entertaining, but there have been a lot less.
That's funny. I'm curious.
So we will see. Again, it's a curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on now to universal screener. As they get the program.
Convince the computer to accept the word Monomoy, I see.
Good evening.
Oh, I have minutes. Can you pass this down, please? So I'm here to talk about universal screener. And Robin mentioned quite a few times about gathering data and informing instruction from that data, so this is kind of a nice fit. I'll wait till everybody has their... So one of the goals of the district is to support all students as learners by providing rich enrichment opportunities and effective interventions. So we do use data to inform our instruction, and some of the tools that are available are universal screeners, formative assessments, informal assessments, and progress monitoring measures. And there are many, many more, but we're focusing mostly on the universal screener for this presentation. So a universal screening tool is accessible to all students. It assesses critical skills and concepts. It is administered usually 3 or 4 times a year. It gives immediate feedback on student growth and also on student learning. It measures growth. It informs the instructional level of the student so that it provides that data that tells the teacher exactly where the student is at that particular point in time. It's able to identify students who are not making adequate progress so that early interventions can be put in frequently. It can assist in the transition process, particularly at the elementary into middle and middle into high. So it provides data for the receiving school to really have a good understanding of where the students are. It also can help us when students come into the district and we need to know exactly where they are in their learning. As we talked about 2 weeks ago about the curriculum cycle, it can inform our curriculum and make sure that we're hitting all the points that we have set our goals. So as we've come together, we've had a lot of different assessment tools, and we've been going out and asking the teachers how the universal screening tools that they've been using are working for them. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from teachers is that the current tools tend to be a little disruptive to the learning environment. They're very time intensive. Sometimes right now our elementary universal math screener can take up to 2 weeks to run all the students through that assessment. We have some data warehouse issues. Some of the data are in Aspen, some of the data are in spreadsheets, and so it's very difficult and time consuming for teachers to try to find the data. We have some assessments that teachers' concerns feel that perhaps there's a little too much subjectivity to the assessment, and that's concerning to them. Again, with the data having many homes, the feedback and the opportunity for teachers to receive instant information on the students is delayed. We have inconsistency at the transition, so the tools that are used at the elementary school are not necessarily measuring in the same way that the tools that are being used at the middle school. And on that note, there are gaps. There are certain areas that we just don't have adequate universal assessments. Oops. So based on the feedback that we received from the teachers and the needs of the district, we established some criteria for looking at universal screeners. Our first criteria was that it's web-based so that we can access the tool from a computer wherever there's internet. This would, kind of as an aside, help to mimic the state assessments that students are now taking on computers so that their familiarity and ease with that tool will grow. We wanted it to be computer adaptive so that we could really focus on individualized learning. If a student continues to get the answers correct, the tool will continue to raise the degree of difficulty of the questions, and the other way, if a student struggles, the questions will get easier and easier, so there's no frustration. You're just getting a really good read on where the student is at that time. We wanted, obviously, an ease of administration, so there's less disruption to the learning schedule. We wanted really good data so that it was immediate and it was formative, and we wanted a nice display that wasn't too busy, but gave teachers the information that they were looking for. And we wanted a progress monitoring component so that we could address the responses to intervention. And then we also wanted to make sure that the tool was sound in its generalizability, reliability, and validity. And we used the screening tools chart that you see on the bottom of the slide that you can go online and look more about how they rated tools. On that note, sometimes the tool that had the highest rating in generalizability might not have been the one that gave us the best data display. So we looked at all of these criteria. So after looking at several tools, we came down to 3 finalists. The first was Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP, Formative Assessment System for Teachers, or FAST, and STAR, which surprisingly doesn't seem to stand for anything. but they still use all caps. So the STAR, we went in, we were able to have some interactive presentations, and then could go in and play around with the tools. The STAR tool, I mean, they were all very similar. They're all very similar. The STAR tool, however, when one of our assistant principals went in as a 6th grader and took the test and kept, in his mind, getting it right and right and right, he elevated up to beyond 6th grade, but it kept him at 6th grade. In other words, the information that we would get on that student wasn't necessarily going to tell us that they were ready for some kind of enrichment, so he says. The FAST tool was excellent on all fronts. It was fast, so that you had a very short assessment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you couldn't really allow the student to maybe go as far as they could go. And the data displays for the FAST were a little intense, and we want to make sure that the information is very readable. And so we went with, we're recommending the Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP. It offers 3 assessments, math and reading from grades kindergarten all the way to 10th grade, and a language usage assessment starting in grades 3 through 10. You can administer the test up to 4 times a year, and there's an additional progress monitoring component for grades kindergarten to 8th grade. The nice thing about the data display in this particular tool is that there's this skills and concepts. The teacher will get a chart with 3 columns, and whatever skills and concepts that you're assessing at that point in time, they'll show you which skills to enhance, which to develop, and which to introduce, and the percentage of time to spend, so that you can really individualize your instruction for your students. And it also comes with, you know me, I always want to make sure that there's plenty of professional development and support. Online modules that are available 24/7, phone support, a community of learning online for teachers to share their ideas, and then an on-site professional development once the fall assessment has been administered and we actually have data to work with. So we see the impact on student learning to be a proactive intervention. We can catch any learning disabilities, or learning problems, I should say, that might be developing early, and catch them. We can provide effective responses to intervention in that whole progress monitoring loop, and we can build our capacity for differentiation of instruction for students needing supports and also ready for enrichment. So we feel that by putting a universal tool like this into the district, that we can move toward our goal for supporting all students as learners.
You mentioned that it can be done 4 times a year, up to 4 times a year. And it covers a lot of grades, so I'm sure the answer to this question depends upon the grade, but, I've got to get the slide back here, but I know one of the concerns that the teachers raised was time intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and disruption of the learning environment, there's a lot of testing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of, blowback on the amount of testing. So what is the time, how long do these tests take?
Well, they can take up to 50 minutes.
50 or 15?
50.
50.
Up to. Most of them are around 30, okay, between 15 and 30. However, we will take assessments off the table. So in other words, this will be able to replace some of the
Others.
others that create those concerns. So we're not adding, okay? We're adding something that's much more efficient, much more effective, and streamlined, so that we can cycle students through, get the same amount of testing time, if not less time, really, and much better information.
And is it the same structure as the past, where there's a period each year where all of the students in a particular grade, use the screener, or is it an individualized thing?
No, it'll be a benchmark, so you align the test to the skills that you are teaching at that time, so that all grade 3, will be cycled through at this benchmark time, et cetera. So it's not.
So all the grade 3 classes will take it at the same time? for example?
Around the same time, yes.
Around the same
Yeah,
time, okay.
I mean, we want to make sure we don't crash the net.
Right.
Although that might not be a problem at the moment.
You say it can be used up to 4 times a year. What do you think, how often do you think it's going to be used? How many times a year? What are you anticipating?
At least 3, and yeah, I mean, you want a fall, you want a winter, and you want a spring, and then ideally something, if spring is too soon, at the end of the year. And again, there are going to be certain students that you're going to want to keep on top of, so that you can make sure that your interventions are effective.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to follow up on that. Is it flexible enough, and I may not understand exactly how it works to ask this question, but you talk about that obviously there are going to be different students who are going to improve at different rates, and is there a possibility of interim testing of individual students by this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you did all of grade 3 in a particular week, spring, the different seasons, and you had a particular group of students who had a particular problem, in an area, could you do an interim testing in between to see if you started to improve?
Yeah, you just own a license, a number of licenses, and then you can use those licenses. So for instance, if you have students who clearly are at grade level moving on, you might want to use those seats, if you will, to do some more intensive progress monitoring.
Cool.
Sure.
I understand the intent of this. I'm wondering if there's any other, will it be used for teacher evaluations, or will it be used for kids' report cards, or is there anything that this will do besides try to inform instructions for the kids?
Its intent is to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, and that we can better serve the students in a differentiated learning environment. Some teachers already are using their universal assessments, some of the ones that are kind of clunky, as part of their district determined measures, which is wrapped into their evaluation. So they may decide once we kind of get rid of the clunky ones, they may want to bring this in or not. That's up to them. That's entirely their decision. And it will not, the only way in which it would be useful as a reporting would be for a parent-teacher conference where you can sit down with these wonderful data displays and have a conversation.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure.
Similar, Carla, once we commit to this map screener and the clunkiness is removed, how long will it take with the online training of staff, not counting sharing at PLC, that all the staff would be trained enough to begin to utilize it? Year 1, 6 months?
I'm hoping 6 months or less. I mean, we're bringing it forward so that we can start to implement. We're actually asking if we can implement a grade 4 and a grade 7 in the spring, in June, so that the high school and the middle school can have that data to start the year. So we'll start to put it in place as soon as we can.
my understanding correctly, that this is already being done in the different levels. This is just putting it all together with one program that's cohesive through.
Yeah, universal screening and benchmarking, it's
It's
already,
happening.
exactly.
In those 3 different areas.
But it's happening
Just differently,
with
different teachers are
different,
using
different tool,
screeners.
I mean, not different tools, I shouldn't say that, because, you know, we have the DRA and we're using
So this would replace the DRA?
yeah, we don't want to get rid of the DRA, but it certainly would replace the benchmark measure that the DRA is now using or providing. This just brings everything together so that, again, there's just more consistency through the grades and from building to building so that we can really understand what's happening with kids.
I must have missed something in the beginning because I thought this was all new coming in and not that it's replacing.
Well, it's a new tool.
Right, but you're replacing
But the
other
process-
screeners
exactly.
that are already in place
Yes,
with this.
with something that's
So
better.
that everybody is using something similar so that when they go from elementary to middle school and middle to high, everybody knows what they're looking at.
Exactly.
Instead of having to go,
Exactly.
oh wait, this teacher used this one, this teacher used this one, they all look the same then.
It all,
In essence?
exactly, and also 2 things. One is that we do have gaps at certain content and grades that we're not really benchmarking, you know, as well as we should. The other thing is that this, a tool like this can really help predict the state assessment performance as well, you know.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when Nancy mentioned the DRA, I'm assuming that you're talking about the DIBELS also.
Mm-hmm.
And so on what's in here for the tool, do you feel like it's going to measure fluency and phonics and all of those things? And for other schools across the Commonwealth, for instance, are they also going to this, so we'd have more of a universal system when we have people move in and move out to provide information?
Well, again, I think one of the real valuable things about having a tool like this is that when students do move in, we can do a really quick assessment to know exactly where they are.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's all students, special ed,
All students.
non-special ed.
The interesting thing to see is the testing in the spring, and then in the fall to see the retention as they go through the summer months.
Won't it?
We may have to extend the school year.
Right.
Bring it on.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a discussion of the mass focus recommendations.
I don't know if you want to stay up there, Carla, or not, but I guess we had the presentation of Math and Focus at the last school committee meeting, and need to really bring it back to the committee, because to launch with Math and Focus, we have curriculum that we need to purchase and professional development that we need to schedule so that we can launch and move forward.
Is there any discussion, questions based upon the presentation? Sharon?
I looked at the book, I liked the format of it. You know, it had a lot of different things. In the student, well, I don't know, I think I was looking at a teacher edition, because it had answers in the back, so would that be safe to assume? But it had a big picture thing, using a real world, 2 paragraphs or something about using street maps or something. Nowhere later did it go back to that, but probably any teacher might use that for some jumping off point. But I liked how they tied those things in. I'm not really familiar with what goes on anymore at 6th grade, so it looked kind of difficult. I love that it was broken up into 2 books, so it was less overwhelming for the kids and also less heavy to carry around. So when they had a chapter which had, I don't know, 10 pages or so in it, and it had a lot of different things, I also liked that it had objectives, so it usually would have 2 objectives, so the teacher wouldn't have to think up what they were teaching. It just states what it is that they're expecting the student to learn. How long would that take? Would it be 10 days, or how long would it take to probably do that?
You mean like a unit?
Yes, it was a unit on, well, I couldn't even tell you what these topics were.
It would take longer to teach you.
Yes, it definitely would. I was a good math student in 10th grade, but I would need that parent refresher course.
Yeah, I mean, the duration of a unit can be anywhere from, a week to 3 weeks to 6 weeks. It really depends on what the unit is about and what it entails. I can't speak to that particular piece that you're talking about, but I just know in general, you have short units and you have long units, but usually a unit is around 3 to 6 weeks.
I didn't have the opportunity to review the book. I was much impressed with the teachers 2 weeks ago that came in and reviewed how they got to this decision. I don't think we have any more time to waste. I would fully agree with a vote to move in the direction of the recommendation of the committee and yourself, Carla, as well as financing it so that we get ourselves into a training mode this coming summer.
That sounded like a motion. That's all.
You had the word
Would
move
that
in
have been a
there.
motion, Mr. Ross?
Got to use it twice?
You did use the word move. I don't know if you moved.
Well, I've had a week back. How long? About a week back.
Was that a motion?
It was, that's why you're the only one who would appreciate that.
I'd second that motion that he didn't make. But I also have a question.
Further discussion?
Thank you. I know that a lot of work went into it, unquestionable, and I appreciate and thank all the people who, you put together to do this. And I would imagine, like all things, where the teachers are busy, that there was varying degrees of input from actual, different math teachers themselves. Since the time that you presented this to us the last time, have you had any more feedback from the teachers about this program? Well, I don't know if you've sought any formal feedback or not, but have you received any more now that people have had a chance to think about it? Teachers, I mean.
Yeah, well, we have an educational council, which actually we have 2. One is for the middle and high school department heads, and one is for the both elementary instructional leaders. So those are the teacher leaders that represent every grade level. And we have shared all of the information that you have seen with those groups, and their colleagues have shared that were on the committee have shared a lot of the materials that they have as well. So the feedback that I've gotten is mostly been around what is the expectation in the fall for implementation. And my answer to that is that we are going to be very patient with ourselves, and we're going to have the experts come and lead us through the process. And I have a tremendous amount of confidence in the training that is involved, that the teachers will be well supported. I think that, and I think that this was echoed in the group 2 weeks ago, people are just really ready for something like this. So I think that we're in a good place. It'll be, you're learning something new, so it's going to be like that. But I think it's patience and, overall, people are ready.
Has a determination been made yet with regard to professional development and training in this as to when it's going to happen and under what circumstances and what's going to be expected of the teachers in terms of, obviously you have they're in compliance with the contract.
Right. Yeah, it's a little frustrating that we don't have more, full days. But I have been, as a matter of fact, just today I was talking to the gentleman from the company. And Mark Wilson has requested, if possible, to split the first introduction training and allow his staff to get a little bit of a head start before we end the school year. And I think that because his crew is going to be dealing with a level of math that's going to be a little more intense than the elementary teachers, not to say that they won't as well, we're looking at ways to steal some of the trainers and split the difference so that they can come and do a introduction for his staff. The September 1st all-day in-service day will be the instructional strategies training for the elementary teachers. And then we have November 8th, which is our next full day for professional development, is the second training. The organization wants you to put at least 5 weeks, if not more, in between your first training and your second training so that you have time to kind of play around and generate questions and so on. So it's very well planned.
Are there going to be any opportunities over the summer of any kind, any off time opportunities?
I've had teachers, because we always have a lot of teachers who do curriculum work over the summer, and the elementary teachers that I've spoken to said, you know, because this is coming, should we just not do math curriculum work and just wait? And my answer is yes, work on your ELA, you know, work on your literacy and your building your units and your pathways and the close reading and so on, and wait for this.
I think some of the summertime challenges is the trainers literally get flown in, you know, and you want, you know, so you want to make sure if you're, you know, paying the expense to bring in sort of an expert to train, that you've got everybody there, and you know, during the summer, trying to get everybody there provides some challenges.
Excuse me, but you know, the middle school, he's not looking, he doesn't have as many teachers that we're looking at when we're looking at the two elementary schools too, so, yeah.
Is there any online supplemental stuff that teachers can could go do on their own time if they choose to?
Yeah, and I would welcome Mark because he's had experience with this in another district, but the trainers and the national trainer has really told me to trust the process. Yeah. And he doesn't, you know, he wants to be able to do it the way they do it, and so I am going to trust his process.
I think I get it. I think I got the answer, thank you.
Any other questions? So we have a motion to accept the math in focus curriculum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now the work begins?
That's right.
The fun begins.
Right, fun. Next on the agenda is the resolutions for the foundation budget and the charter school cap.
So there are two resolutions in your packet. One deals with the resolution against lifting the cap on charter schools. I'll forego reading the whole thing again to you, but you know, the long and short of it is if the school committee were to make a motion to sign and send this forward, it would be saying that the school committee is against lifting cap on charter schools that would have a deleterious effect on the educational program that we're able to provide here. And it's, you know, it's just sort of acknowledging that we have a significant amount of money that leaves our district to fund charter schools, and in an area where there's already ample competition through inter-district school choice and already charter schools both at the middle and high school that we compete with, to have additional seats opened up. It puts us in a compromised position.
Everyone had an opportunity to read this. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution against lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools.
We hear a second.
Second.
Further discussion?
I've been following the news about what I believe it's the Senate is the one that's voted on this already. I'm not sure the House has, and I know that the Senate and the governor seem to have a disagreement on it. And to the extent I understand what I've read, my understanding is the Senate, for example, has proposed, this is a very broad-based resolution, which basically states that we don't support the cap it being expanded at all under any circumstances, basically. And my understanding is that some of the things that are being discussed up in Boston would be, possibility that it would be, they wouldn't lift the cap on statewide, but they might reserve the right to do it in certain districts where there might really be an advantage to it or a benefit to the students, which is what we're all here for, and I know is the reason for this resolution in the first place. So I'm not 100% sure that I would support this in its current, the way it's currently drafted as being so broad-based. So that's just my personal thoughts on it.
I've been talking to other school committees off this listserv, and this has been supported by every single school committee, as far as I know, that it's gone to, plus selectmen and finance committees all over the Commonwealth, as this. One of them modified it.
Karen?
You say it's pretty broad. Would you like to change the language or rewrite it in a different way? Would that make sense, Brian?
No, because I don't think that if you will, the jury is in yet, at least in terms of the people who are studying this in the State House, as to what's the best solution or what's the best compromise. So, and I don't claim to have enough knowledge or experience to be able to form my own opinion. So I think I have more of an open mind. I wouldn't vote against this, but I think I would abstain, and because I don't feel like that we have enough information. But I'm not arguing against it. I share all the whereases. I have the same concerns that are raised by this, but I'm just not sure that I support as I said, how broad the particular language is. But I don't have an alternative in mind.
From what I understood about what the Senate version was that they passed, I wasn't completely against it, but I would prefer this. It was tied, the funding was tied to certain things, and it wasn't so bad, but still, this I think is better.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote on the resolution on charter schools.
You get
Those of you
You are,
sat too close to me the last time.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
One.
One abstention? So moved. Next.
The second, hopefully this doesn't come down to me for the next meeting, but the second resolution is one that Sharon alerted us to. Again, I think off of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees listserv, that it's a resolution just asking that the Massachusetts Foundation budget really keep pace with inflation. I was at a presentation before a finance committee a number of years ago where they were looking at a school district and what the financial support was coming from the state over time for that school district, and really just plotting it out in terms of if you look at that funding relative to other inflationary things, are we being fully funded? So this resolution talks about how the Massachusetts Foundation Budget Review Commission identified two areas, being employee health insurance and special education, where the Massachusetts Foundation budget significantly underestimates the true cost of educating students in the Commonwealth and has failed to keep pace with rising costs. So it goes forward to ask that the Monomoy Regional School Committee calls on Massachusetts legislature and the governor of Massachusetts to fully fund and adopt the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission in the immediate future to, again, follow the ongoing rising costs of education, but particularly considering that there are some facets of education that are growing in terms of cost significantly more than the average cost of living.
I move that we support the resolution calling for full funding of the Foundation Budget Review Commissioner's recommendation.
Second. Second.
Discussion.
I support this completely. The state has made a mess of this for a long, long time, and I think this is something that has needed fixing for a long time.
They just need to fund, what they say they're gonna fund.
More discussion? Okay, motion is to accept the resolution on the foundation budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Moving on to the 2016-2017 school calendar.
So in your packets is the school calendar as you've seen it before, with the student start date following Labor Day on the 6th of September. The things that have been added onto it since our conversation last are the middle and elementary school conference days, which would be the last full week in October on, let's see without my glasses, the 25th and 27th. And then we have also resolved at the high school coming up with an exam schedule that would work for the high school, so that there is a 3-day or 3 half-days of exams that happen at the end of both the first semester and the end of the second semester. And that actually gets coupled with the school working on the front end of those 3 days, so that each class can have an exam. So we are moving towards sort of reintroducing 3 half days at the end of the first semester and 3 at the end of the year.
Any discussion? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the 2016-2017 calendar as presented.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. You didn't want discussion before.
Once again,
I was waiting for
I
this.
was waiting.
once again, shoveling sand against the tide. I will point out that I would officially and publicly call upon the superintendents plural, of the Cape and Islands, as one of the many people who will be traveling next week at 3 times the cost of every other week that you could possibly travel. I call upon the superintendents of all of the Cape and Islands to support and seek to amend the schedules going forward for the whole group, to allow for at least one of the February or April vacation weeks to be on a week that other people are not on vacation. Having said that, I will still vote for that.
Karen?
I actually think that's a good idea.
It is a
I
good idea.
agree with you. I don't, I think when you brought that up before, I thought you were advocating changing to a week or something in March instead of having one in February and one in April. But if you're just talking about shifting either forward or back a week for each of these vacations within the month, of February and April, I think that's a good idea.
And I don't want to just leave it at the cost, okay? But, we have situations, I'll just be very brief, but we have situations where we have students that are not in school this week because their parents have taken them on vacation this week instead of next week for exactly the reasons I brought up. We have parents who are asking teachers to provide lesson plans for their students who are effectively out of school without permission for the entire week, which is a lot to ask the teachers for. And I know that I'm pretty confident that we have some sort of policy against that, but we all know that there are teachers who will do it and there are teachers who will not do it. I think it causes problems for the teachers, it causes problems for the parents. So maybe next year I'll ask to have this done at least by us, but I still think it should be done county-wide.
And it's something I'll re-raise again. I think it's a great idea, and it's complex. I think, for those who weren't part of a conversation that we had at a school committee meeting a year or so ago, it was initially raised by Carol Woodbury and Dennis Sharmuth as something that would be beneficial to her families. I think it would be beneficial to our families. And we floated it out with the superintendents of the Cape and Islands. Martha's Vineyard does actually do this, and of course Martha's Vineyard is in a very unique situation that you're on the island, or you're Rick Travers and you come on. And what you would find is that as you get further and further towards the ridges, there becomes ever increasing amounts of interesting dynamics, and even within this committee and superintendent, Nancy's family might be going on vacation one week while her husband, who is a teacher but not with Monomoy, might be on a very different vacation pattern, and while my wife works in one school district, because we might be going on vacation and she might be staying at home. She might not actually have a problem with that. But it's and I think it's that challenge for the families that straddle districts. Do we then start to exasperate the whole attendance piece that I think is valid? There are families that take advantage of the airfares. In fact, my dear daughter today was telling me, it's like, Dad, I'd like to go someplace. I was like, well, if we drive to Philadelphia, we can find reasonable airfare.
Right.
And I since you brought it up, I mean, I understand that's been stated before, but we make a lot of decisions that end up being for the benefit of the larger group of people and are not supported by a smaller group of people. We may be discussing a similar topic when it comes to school starting time,
Could be.
for example. But I think that, and again, I'll bring it up next year perhaps, but I think I'd like to get feedback from the parents, find out how many people would be affected by this positively or adversely, because we represent the entire system, not just the whatever, probably small percentage of people that would be adversely affected by it.
We could couple that into a school start time vacation week survey.
There you go. There you go. More information. Information is power.
So I think this would be a good project for you, Brian. And anyone else that has, it's not that I don't have an interest in it. I used to have more interest than I do now. But, we'd have to know some information, like the week would have to be fairly close to where it is now. It would have to not be that week, and it would have to be less expensive. So if somebody could do research on that to tell us how much more expensive and when it would be, then we'd have something to move forward with.
Good study to
I'll
see
pick
how
up
long
the
the
challenge.
Actually, I'll remind you all, this is not about the money.
But it's not, and as I pointed out, it's not just a financial issue. It does affect the time on learning.
Yes.
My only comment to this, and I also had no strong feelings either way for years and years, however, it is, as Scott said, it is very complex. And secondly,
That's why we get the big money. these complex issues.
Secondly, once you start to look at the entire county, but specifically our own, I'm sure there are as equal, if not probably many, many children and moms and dads who go nowhere.
True.
Who, all 3 vacations, take it as a breather, and they're at home and they take day trips because they can't afford to go to places. And so that group, and there's no way to poll that group, but that's another population. So clearly there are many, many people who both folks work in the family and can arrange with months in advance a getaway. But, so I just offer that as another element of how complex it is.
Any further discussion? The motion on the table is to accept the school calendar for the 2016-2017 school year as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Next on the agenda is the Cape Net broadband proposal.
So before we get into the proposal, let me just ask a little favor of our senior district administrator to see if I could get him to operate the camera before us. The reason I want to do that is one of the things that I just want to share and announce is that as we went through the process of looking for a director of instructional technology, we decided to look towards an interim. And our cameraman for school communities, as long as I've been here, Jim Birchfield, is the district's instructional technology specialist. So Jim's role here in Monomoy and before Monomoy since it was 1996 or something like that, has been helping teachers previously with Harwich Public Schools and now with Monomoy's using technology in the classrooms. And I think Jim in many ways is and has been this untapped resource that the district has. And I think he has a wealth of information and knowledge about computers. And I've selected Jim to be our interim Director of Instructional Technology. Jim will start that in July, but I want to also give Jim opportunities to try on that. And here we have sort of our first thing that that deals with technology, and I've asked Jim to sort of step in and start working with Katie and I on things like this as we close out the year, because starting July 1, this will be Jim's bailiwick, but then again, it's been his bailiwick for well over a decade. So Jim, it's all yours.
If you don't mind, I need to just start up the
Whatever it takes. One of the things I also want to mention that Jim has done, and that I think has been noticed by many in the district in the last couple of weeks since we've announced Jim as the interim director of instructional technology. He's been putting out every Tuesday. There's a technology update, just where we're heading, what's new, and again, I think just the same way that that you see Friday Focuses coming out from Bill and the news, the different news coming out from each of the schools, and Jim's sending that out to the staff to just let them know what's coming, what to expect, and he has a nice vision for how to get us moving forward.
I just want to say thanks to everybody. It's really exciting to be stepping into a new role, and I love the district. I love everything that's going on. We have a lot of exciting developments in technology, and I'm really, really looking forward to kind of leading the charge and improving everything that's going on with the technology in the classroom. So tonight, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the E-rate funding program that we're going to be using to do some infrastructure upgrades. And it's a fairly complex program, and I can't say that I've personally had a lot of experience with it, but I'd like to just give a broad overview of what it's about and how we can use some of the funding in the district. This is just a brief video that explains it pretty well, I think. Just gives a nice little quick look.
E-rate is a federal program that reimburses schools for technology investments. It's like a sale on Wi-Fi and broadband at 40 to 80% off. Thanks to E-rate, Massachusetts communities can upgrade their school's technology infrastructure to support 21st century teaching and learning. And schools can use the money they get from E-rate to fund EdTech initiatives. So, what do education leaders need to know? Managed Wi-Fi, internal connections, and basic network maintenance are all eligible. All schools get a pre-discount budget of $150 per student over 5 years. Work with your school committee and community to secure the local match for E-rate and commit E-rate reimbursements for EdTech costs. Act now to meet the critical filing deadlines.
So that was sort of the exciting overview of it. Now comes the kind of the more long-winded piece of it all, but
E-rate is a federal program that reimburses schools for technology investment.
no problem. See if we can get to the next slide. This one's not working. Can you see if you can get it to go to the next one? Just click right around there somewhere. Or not on the video.
Teaching and learning. And schools can use the money they get from E-rate to fund EdTech.
I personally needed to do that, so I was grateful. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so,
I got that job.
yeah. Thanks, Robin.
And you're our new director.
Things are going great so far. Okay, so just these are kind of bulleted items about E-rate. So it's funded, the money comes from internet service providers and phone bills. So it's when you get your phone bill each month or your internet bill, you always see all these little fees that they charge on there. And they're always kind of mysterious to me, and I always wondered what they were about. But now we know that part of that money is coming and going into E-rate. So in a strange way, it's coming back to us. But that's where they actually get the money from. So it's, probably just all these little, 50-cent fees here, 25 there, but it adds up. And it provides a discount for high-speed internet and telecommunication services. And that's for nonprofits, so that would include nonprofit schools, libraries, and other nonprofit organizations. It's based on the percentage of low-income students and the location, meaning like typically rural or urban locations get a higher percentage. So they have a formula that works based on those criteria. So if we have a large free and reduced lunch population, then we might get a higher percentage of E-rate funds. And if we're in a more rural location, for instance, we might get a larger percentage. And how the formula is calculated, that's something that's pretty complex, I'm sure, but just the basics of it are based on the income and the location. Then the district, if we decide that we would qualify for the E-rate funds, we would submit a 470 form, and that's something that we're going to be working with a consultant to do. And most districts seem to use a consultant because it can get pretty complicated, apparently. And so the consultant that we're using is O'Neill, and I'm sorry, I forgot the woman's first name, but I want to say Nicole. I'm sorry, thanks. Nicole O'Neill, and she's a consultant that specializes in E-rate, helping schools get their E-rate funding. So she'll help us put together the Form 470, and then we submit that, and the organization that funds it is USAC, And they commit to the funding if they approve our 470, and then we get up to 50% reimbursement for the internet or telecom services. And then we, as a district, we would have to cover the non-discounted portion. So that's just kind of the sort of a quick overview of the broad concept of how E-rate funding works. Let's see what's next. Can you try and click it? Yeah, this thing's not reaching. Try the space bar, is that what? It's not doing it either, huh? It's the tab up there, kind of in the upper left. Go up.
Higher.
All right, keep going up. I think, yeah, let's go with this one. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I think that'll work. Oh, there you go, there's a little.
Do you want me to go backwards?
Yeah, go back one, let me just make sure I didn't miss one.
That's like two.
Okay, keep going.
That's three.
Yeah, that's fine, okay. All right, so this one, this is the link here, so just hang on just a sec. This one, it's a little overview of how the internet service works in the school district. So it's, at home you just have the cable connection coming in, and you have a little box, and somehow it all seems to work well. But in the school district, it's a little more complicated. So this is a nice little video clip again that just sort of explains the basics of how the internet service comes into the school district and then how it's distributed around the district to the different schools. So, thank you, Robin.
Here's how the network for a school district is typically set up. Internet access is distributed by a district hub. In our case, it is the school district's main office. The district hub accesses the internet through an internet service provider, or ISP, and then distributes the connectivity to the wide area network, or WAN, which is the connections between district locations, school campuses, district offices, and any support buildings. Let's take a closer look at how internet is accessed by a district hub, typically a district office. There are two components that are important to understand. First, the physical data connection. This is referred to as transport. It may also be called a circuit, a transport circuit, or simply a data connection. Second, the service to the internet. This, along with transport circuit, is referred to as internet access. On the district's E-rate application, this link may have been described in three ways. First, internet access, which is both the data connection and the service. It can also be referred to as managed internet, bundled internet, or direct internet access. Second, internet access service with no circuit. This is just the standalone internet access service from the ISP. Oftentimes, this means the physical circuit or transport is being built separately. Last but not least, transport. It is a circuit that connects the district hub to the internet service provider, and it could be the circuit that connects the district-wide area network, or district WAN. Want more information? We have detailed descriptions of school district networks and services in the Compare and Connect K-12 FAQ. Thanks for watching.
It's nice to just see sort of this visual illustration of how that all works. So that simplifies it a lot, but when you get right down to it, there's a lot of connectivity that has to go on, a lot of different switches and hubs and things that we have to basically maintain and purchase as they start to wear out, or as the broadband speeds increase. We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure pieces like the switches that can handle that increase in the broadband. So there's a lot of internal workings that we have to consider when we're talking about upgrading our network. So it's really key that we get the E-rate funding so that we can purchase a lot of this equipment, because it's really it is expensive. So Let's see if we got the next slide coming up there. Is that coming? Is there anything there?
That's slide 5.
Huh? I guess I'm missing a couple.
Keep going forward.
Yeah.
While we're waiting.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Anyway, sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there
There you go.
Oh, okay, all right. So essentially, we've got, I think there was another slide before that, but we've got, which is fine. We've got two areas that we're looking at. One is doing the broadband, and the other is doing the infrastructure upgrade at the middle school. So at the middle school, we're going to take a look at the Wally computer proposal. And that's to upgrade the wireless system in the middle school. So it's definitely an aging infrastructure that's really having trouble handling all the wireless internet that we need to have in the school in order to support all the Chromebooks and the one-to-one initiative that we're hoping to put forward. So what we need to do basically is add more wireless access points and run new cabling to service those access points. So what you have in the school, or throughout the school in the ceiling, typically you'll have they're little boxes, and they call them WAPs. A lot of time you'll hear people say, oh, we've got a WAP in this room or a WAP in that room, and a WAP is a wireless access point. And what happens is you run a cable from a controller that sends the signals to the wireless access points, and then the wireless access points send these kinds of radio signals out to the devices that pick it up, and then they can talk to the network and get their internet connection and what have you. So it's really, it's key. You can't have a school full of internet devices like Chromebooks without having a really strong and solid wireless network. So we went out to the state bid contract and found Wally Computer. We've used them before. They helped us set up the high school. And again, when you go to the state bid contracts, those are pretty much set. So I don't believe that you have to get multiple bids on those. So Wally gave us the state bid pricing, and it came out at $55,640. That's E-ratable. So potentially we could get up to 50% off, if I'm not mistaken on that. And that's going to include 55 of the Aerohive is the brand or the type. They have different brands like Aerohive or Cisco. Those are two of the big names. And we've been using Aerohive at the high school, and it's been working quite well overall. So we decided to go with the Aerohives at the middle school also, and that will add 55 of those, and that's quite a few, and that will definitely give us coverage in all the areas of the school that have up to this point been somewhat weak in terms of the wireless signals. And then again, it includes the cabling and the installation as well. So that's just kind of like, in a nutshell, the Wally proposal, and that's what we're looking at in terms of the cost and what they're providing. Okay. If we can get it to go to the next one. Okay, and then the second piece of this is the Open Cape. The Open Cape network it's the broadband network that's been established. It was all created with a federal grant a few years back. And the idea was to provide a kind of a solid fiber backbone of internet service that ran from Brockton all the way out to the end of the Cape, and then down to Providence in Rhode Island. And the concept was to create a kind of redundant network that would not fail in case like one point along the way got cut off somehow, that there was always a way for it to go back around and get to wherever it had to go. And it was really set up as a kind of an emergency system, so that initially they were thinking, oh, we're having a tough time connecting all the emergency services throughout the region, And this network would allow us to connect them all in a way that would have the redundancy built in, and therefore everybody would be able to communicate with each other if there was a state of emergency. So that was sort of the premise that the whole thing was built on, and then it sort of dovetailed into other uses like providing services, network services or internet service to libraries and schools and the municipalities. So it took quite a few years to pull it all together, but it's actually finally, lit up. And you can see the blue line, maybe a little difficult to see, but the blue line that kind of runs around down the Cape and back is that's the network itself. So what we're going to do is leverage the Open Cape network, and there's a provider called CapeNet, and CapeNet will be our service provider for the internet service. So we've been using Comcast up until now, and Comcast has provided us with, and they do it in megabytes or megabits per second, and they measure your internet service coming in, and we've had Comcast at 100 megs, we call it. And that's, it's been okay for us, but with the things like the TV studio, trying to stream video live, 1,000 Chromebooks or more that we have in the district that all pull from the Wi-Fi and are using the internet for pretty much everything they do. There's always a need for more broadband. And Open Cape gave us an offer where we will get, one more slide, I think. Yeah. So here's a little breakdown of the Open Cape or the CapeNet offering. So they're offering up to 500 megabits of internet access. So we're at 100 now, and that would boost it up to 500, which would be, that would be a nice jump. And then they would also include a virtual private network, which essentially connects all of the schools. So it would be a fiber connection that would run between all of the different schools in the district, and it would be like a secure network connection between each school so that we can all be on the same kind of network together, and it would be secure. So they call that a VPN. Sometimes you'll hear the VPN term thrown around. So, and they're going to include that at no charge, and usually, they would charge for services like that, but it's been negotiated to get that for free or included. And the charge that they are proposing is $3,000 a month, and that's up to 50% E-ratable as well. So that's a significant discount, of course. And they also will include fiber laterals to the high school and the elementary school. Now, a fiber lateral is basically just a line that comes off of the main connection. So if Open Cape has a main line or like a backbone that would go, say, to the police and fire station, and that's kind of one of the main connectors coming into the municipality. And then if you want to connect off of that, say at the elementary school in Harwich, they would have to run a lateral off of that. So basically it's just kind of like an extra line that runs off of the main line. And typically they charge quite a bit of money. We looked at this years ago. I think Sam will remember this, that when they were first proposing the whole Open Cape initiative, that we were trying to figure out how to get that over to the elementary school, because the elementary school in Harwich has always been quite isolated in terms of the connectivity. We were never able to get a fiber connection between the elementary school and the high school because it was so expensive. They had to either dig under the ground or run the wire. It was prohibitively expensive, so we never did it. And so when Open Cape came along, we were excited to get a connection through that. And we found out again, it's going to be kind of pricey to get a lateral to come off of the police and fire station. But at this point, CapeNet's offering to do that without any extra charge too. So I think we've gotten quite lucky with the CapeNet offering. They're offering a good amount of broadband, and they're doing a lot of extra work at no charge. So
it's over $38,000 is what it is going to cost them to do that.
Yeah. So overall, from my estimation, it's a good deal. And then they would complete all the work by July 1st. And that would get us up and running for the next school year, no problem. And then this is just kind of a map, if you want to get a sense of what goes into kind of connecting the schools. This is a Comcast mapped out the network for us at one point, and this is just a kind of a graphic that shows just, kind of how things connect to each other. So this one's looks like it's probably a couple years old, but you can just sort of see it gets kind of, complex, that there's a lot of little connections that have to happen, and there's a lot of, things that have to be considered when we're building a network in the school district. A lot of this stuff is in closets, and, you don't see it, and so it seems to be this kind of mysterious process that just, we just have the network, we have the internet, we have the wireless, but there's a lot of hardware that kind of goes into this. And so you can bring a broadband connection in, like the Open Cape connection, and that's what they call a fiber connection. So it's a very fast, stable connection. But they only bring that to the school. But once you're in the school, and I mentioned this briefly before, you have to do something with it once it's in the school. So there are pieces of hardware like domain controllers, and there's servers and switches, and there's cabling that connects all of these things. So there's this whole kind of system that exists inside of each building that we have to basically, maintain and upgrade, really. Because, we have some of the switches that we have are older, and they may only be able to handle, 10 megabits per second. And then we're bringing in this much bigger broadband connection, but if you use an older switch on a bigger broadband connection, it gets throttled, and you're actually only using a small fraction of what you potentially could have. So we have to really assess the internal workings, the hardware, and I believe quite a bit of that is E-ratable as well. So that's just kind of the, everybody's falling asleep over that kind of tech talk. I just wanted to give you some sense of, the complexity of the inner workings of the network, and and again, it's just, that's why it's so important to get the E-rate funding. Yeah. Yes.
Jim, the 500 megabits or megabytes, whichever it is that upgradable in the future?
Yes, it is. That's my understanding. You can go up to a gigabit.
And there would be a direct fiber connection then to the high school and the Harwich Elementary School, right? Based on it. What about the connections to the Chatham schools?
They're already connected. So,
by fiber?
Yeah, so it was already installed long before I got here. And so it's what's needed to get there is to pull fiber up Oak Street. They have, the town of Harwich has given them permission to use town conduit to pull to this building and to pull to Harwich Elementary. So it would provide that connection, and that's, when I was saying it's $38,000 of cost on their end. That's for the cable and the pulling and whatever last connections need to go from the town conduit to the building.
Cool, thanks.
Yes, Gary.
This, just a point here, the 500 is megabits per second, and that is both upload and download speed. And as far as increasing the bandwidth, if you look at the techedge.net bandwidth tool, there's a link from the Department of Education website. Our recommended minimum internet speed for 2017 to 2018 is 2 gigabits per second. It's not 1, it's 2 for the 5 year.
Yeah, that's the recommended.
Correct.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we can necessarily get that. I mean, that's the ideal that everybody's trying to get to.
We can get that from CapeNet. I spoke to Bill Kelly at length this morning. he's a colleague of mine in Tech Council.
Okay.
So I talked to him about this at length.
Yeah.
But it's something to consider if, this is the recommendation, that we should have 2 gigabits per second in the following year. So we should have either that in the contract or just trust that it's not gonna be a problem for them to increase it. Bill said, you know, it isn't gonna be a problem for them, but if we would rather have it written into the contract, then we should, as far as increasing to that recommended speed.
Yeah, I mean, the more we can get, the better. I mean, if there's any way to do it, and if we can find the funding and money for it, it's, yeah, absolutely, the more we can get, the better we're off, really.
You'll appreciate this, if we have it written into the contract, it would be at the same cost as, you know, if you increase by a certain amount, it's gonna go up by a certain amount, but keeping in mind that technology prices always go down over time. So if we don't have it written into the contract, we're likely to get a lower cost, you know, in the future, if you're following me.
But if
Bill pointed that out.
Yeah, if it's expandable to 2, then it might make sense, obviously, presumably at 4 times the cost, right? Because that would be 4 times the speed. But
Not quite, but
some
yes,
additional percentage, right?
Some additional percentage.
So my question is, would it make sense to start with this to see if it's enough? I mean, it's a 3-year contract for 500. Presumably, they'd be happy to sell us more down the road.
Yes.
They're just not going to sell us less because we're agreeing to 500.
Right.
So it seems to me to make sense. I'm asking, I guess, but it would seem to me to make sense to start with this, which is already 5 times more than we have, see whether that's sufficient, and then expand as needed.
I just wanted to bring that up, that, you know, the online bandwidth tool says
Yeah.
that we should have 2 gigabits per second. And it sounds like, especially with the new universal screener and other things, you know, MCAS 2.0, everything's going to be using the internet, and we really want to be prepared for it and extra prepared. You know, more rather than less. It's going to, I mean, it increases exponentially. You know, any programs that use web design, web development, any robotics programs, anything, I mean, it needs the connectivity. We should have it, you know, we should just make sure that we have that possibility. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that for the fiber optic laterals, that's single strand fiber, and there is no redundancy built in for those. That has not been addressed. In fact, Bill Kelly said he highly recommends that we keep the low-level backup with Comcast for those 2.
Yeah, I believe that's what we were doing.
Okay, that wasn't mentioned anywhere, nor was any
Yeah,
cost
I left that
given
one.
to us.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that, yeah.
So,
We have Comcast right now, so we can maintain that, kind of the low level. Comcast is a redundant backup situation, so if something happened to CapeNet, then we would have Comcast as a, you know, just as an emergency system basically to keep the administration running and doing, you know, all the basic things that we would have to do to just keep things moving.
that's just for the 2 schools that are on the single strand, because they do have the redundancy in the backbone. That's what they call the blue line that you had on the map. It's the backbone,
Right.
and they've had that in place for quite some time.
Mhm.
But what is the cost for keeping the Comcast backup for the other 2 schools?
I don't have the figure right on top of my head right now. It's whatever we're paying now. I'd have to check and see.
And what is the megabits per second that,
We have 100 right now.
pardon?
100?
Right, but that's the same, that's what you're keeping for the low-level backup with Comcast?
Well, that I don't know. We haven't determined how much we need for that redundancy. I don't know if 100 is too much or not enough. I don't have that answer yet.
I think that's important to include with the CapeNet service to make sure that we approve that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree that the future is going to just continue to use more and more broadband. So, you know, one thing we might want to consider is just things like switches and the internal hardware that can accommodate that kind of scalability, that increase in the bandwidth. Because I know they have hardware that can handle quite a bit more than what we're going to have, but that will allow us to kind of scale up to it as the service gets cheaper and cheaper. But again, you can only go as fast as your internal hardware will allow. So I'm just trying to think ahead a little bit on that one too.
The recommendation from Cape Net was to keep some amount of bandwidth with Comcast. We're currently surveying others to see what's the amount of bandwidth that you've kept. In that, if we kind of look at it from a business office standpoint, if something goes down, we need to go and make sure that we can then have the administrative functions of the district still run, while the bigger pipelines getting back up to, working.
You would have that because the middle school where your office is on the backbone, you would still have that.
I just think what is important to remember is that we're looking to approve the Cape Net service, not what we're worrying about the backup part yet. This is just to move forward with this right now.
Right, but, okay.
We're not looking to change the Comcast service. This is just to move forward with this to pull in the faster service using the E-rate. So your questions are great questions, and it doesn't really affect what this is.
And part of it is there's a timeliness that we need to say, yes, we're going to have Comcast provide an equal amount of bandwidth. It would be $18,000 more roughly for the school district. So to have Cape Net come in, provide a service, provide the installation for free, so to speak. We need to go and say, yes, we're going to go with you, to go and have them start pulling it so that July 1 we can say, shut down the amount of bandwidth coming from Comcast and turn on Cape Net.
I did ask Bill Kelly about the July 1st date and if there was any issue with that, and he said as long as the contract is approved by the end of April, they will have no problem putting the fiber in that needs to be put in.
Sharon?
This is not my area, so I'm just trying to listen to what everyone's saying. But I'm wondering, with the different possibilities, if on the order right here, or contract or whatever we're doing, if it might be not prudent to say something like with doing this with plans for future upgrade. I know that when, in my house, when people come in, electricians or whatever, they can plan it for future upgrades in one way or just what I'm asking for. And that's limiting. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, I just want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can so it's cost effective for us.
Well, we have with Cape Net arranged, that, and it's not that we would pay $3,000 for the next 500. That it's significant.
I see it's 4,500 for twice the speed.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were trying to look at 3 years in technology is a long time, and particularly when you have a video program that is in its infancy and about to really flourish, that can eat up a lot of bandwidth fast.
Well, Facebook is planning for a drone-oriented wireless connection, so this may be our backup program in a couple of years.
There is no Facebook in the school system.
Right now.
So you're putting on your to-do list for July 1st is, what do I have to do to my hardware to make sure that we're updated
Yeah,
going
honestly,
forward to accept the higher bandwidth?
Yeah, the bandwidth is going to be, that will be available, it's going to increase. That's not really the issue. It's whether our building infrastructure can handle those increases.
Switches are...
Yeah, scalability, that's what it's all about. So I'd like to really, between now and then, I'm really wanting to look hard at all of that, what we have. We'll get some network assessments and have somebody really identify, where the weak spots are, where the bottlenecks could happen, and see if we can do something about that.
And that, we could apply for the, percentage off as well?
Yeah, I think certain hardware, yeah. And that's where it can get tricky. I think you have to, that's where the consultants can be very useful, where they can tell you exactly what you can, write off or get the discount on and what you're not able to. So it's, but yeah, I think the potential's there, so, we're looking forward to that. I think it's really exciting. If we can get those networks humming, I think everything's going to be possible.
Yeah.
What about the county network?
The town?
County.
Oh, the county?
Mm-hmm.
What about it?
The RAN, are we staying on that? And how much capacity do we have with that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The regional access network through the Barnstable Commission?
Yeah, where they have the co-location center from, like, the regional,
Well,
the
we're
WAN.
on that right now.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if we're continuing
yeah.
as
I
part
don't,
of this.
yeah, I'm not real sure.
On this
what you-
agreement? On
I'm not
page
sure that's
one,
on there. Huh?
do you have this document?
Yeah.
On page 1, number 7, under the notes, it says that the school district will be connected to the Barnstable County Regional Wide Area Network at no additional cost.
It was my understanding we already were connected.
Well, we'll still be connected
Maintain connection.
at no additional cost.
Thanks, Jim, for this info.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm well behind the curve. What is it you need from us on the Wally Computer Associates bid this evening to move this forward?
We would need the school committee to vote to award Wally and vote to award the Cape Net internet connectivity so that we can move forward with the E-rate paperwork that has to get in by the 29th, I believe, of this month, which is, I think, 3 days after our next school committee meeting.
A follow-up question, and then I'll make a motion. Can we accommodate Karen's suggestions, because she's got a great deal of knowledge on this? Independent of Brian's thought that if we went the excess amount of power without buying into all that money it would cost us, would we be able to, year 2 or 3, reconvene and say, yes, now we want to increase? If that's my understanding that could happen, I would make a motion, and Karen responded, I would make a motion that we approve the Wally contract for the amount listed as per the bid.
The Wally contract and the Cape Net contract are separate. I didn't really speak about the Wally contract. It was more the internet part of it that I was speaking about, so I don't know, it might make sense to do those separately.
Then I guess the motion, I'll speak to it just the Wally for now.
I'll
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion on awarding the contract to Wally Computer Associates for the Wi-Fi at the middle school? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Second item would be the service contract with CapeNet as a provider for internet. Ron?
I move that we enter into the contract, the proposed contract with Cape Net for the 3-year service at 500, whatever it is.
Megabits per second.
Megabits per second, not megabytes per second.
Second. Second.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion?
Are you all comfortable with not having it written into the contract that if we need the 2 gigabits? I mean, Bill Kelly is a really nice guy. I've known him for a while. I don't think there's an issue with increasing to that if we need to within the 3-year period, but I just want to make sure that you all are comfortable with that.
Yeah, can I, because if I understood you, you were suggesting that we're better off not having it
Yeah.
written in there because it might be
Financially,
cheaper.
yeah.
Okay, then I'm totally with that.
But you're the lawyer of our group, so I wanted to.
No, that's, well, I don't, not for this group, I
No,
don't
I
think.
know. Your brain thinks that way.
Yeah, okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of awarding CapeNet broadband the service provider, effective July 1st, 2016.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Nice first presentation.
Sam, excellent job once again. Jim, can you keep
Now.
the school, Jim, can you keep the start time?
Wait.
Can you keep the start time presentation? Maybe I'll be able to advance the slides. We're good. Is there a clicker? Or do I have to use Sam again? All right, good. All right, so I sent out last Friday to all of the staff and all the parents this PowerPoint to start a discussion. I got an email from one of the school committee members, Amy Middleton, who asked if we could go and have start a discussion on start times here at the school committee. And I thought that maybe the appropriate thing to do was to go back and actually watch the school committee meeting from a few months before I landed here at Monomoy. So many of you on the school committee had in April 2012 a presentation by Rachel Barnes' Project Citizen students who came to give a 15-minute long presentation. There was a whole cast of thousands. It was the entire room at the Town Hall Annex in Chatham was just filled with students, each presenting their piece. And it was really well researched, and at the time in 2012, this was really based on 2 decades worth of research on school start times and what are the advantages there. The students that presented mentioned the advantage of shifting to a later start time. And if I step back for a second, we have to look at the time, Harwich Middle School, the teachers at the time, I think, were supposed to report to duty at 7:05, and the kids came minutes after that, and shortly after 2 o'clock, the school day ended at Harwich Middle School, and Harwich High School ended just shortly after that because the buses picked up at the middle school, went over to the high school, and that's kind of how the day in Harwich ran. Chatham was about 25-30 minutes off of that, so right around 7:30, everything was kicking into gear, and so we were talking about between 7 and 7:30 when the start times had been, and these students were presenting a proposal to shift the start times, and we're coming to the school committee to recommend that based on the research that when we build the new school district, we should shift the start times and look at an 8:30 start time for high school students. The advantages that they mentioned in their presentation, and there's a link on the bottom of this slide that you can go to go watch that presentation, was that students will find that they will get more sleep with a later start time, that student drivers will actually have less accidents is what the research shows, that the students are more alert in class, it provides students more time to eat breakfast, the results are improved grades, decreased tardiness, and improved attitude. And the concerns that they raised is that a later start time has the potential to get in the way of students' after-school jobs and after-school sports, and they were just looking at that as the balancing factors to take into consideration. So, there's been a lot of stuff showing up in the newspapers and little. I'm like advancing my computer today. Thank you, Robin. If I advance my computer, I get to see what's behind me. But there's a lot that's been printed out there about that schools are slow to respond to this. Yes, the first schools to make these changes were back in the mid '90s, and there were huge improvements that were seen when high schools shifted in Minnesota to later start times. But why so slow to respond? And the concerns that that show up repeatedly are that that it may impact students' after-school lives, sports. There's this natural understanding of families that have older children and count on older children to take care of younger siblings, or count on a high school student. This is how it was for my family. We counted on a high school student who got out before our kids every day to be there, and essentially was sort of the babysitter for a number of years. And just sort of a realization that change impacts everybody in different ways. And I just wanted to preface this, that this is one recommendation that no matter what is not going to make everyone happy. In fact, we have 20-some people here. Guaranteed, we're all over the place on this. And from a personal standpoint, I can ask my 2 children. It's like, look, Dad's floating out this thing today, and one of them's like, I think it's great. The other one's like, I think it's bad. And I can walk down the hallway in the middle school, and there'll be one teacher. It's like, I like it, and the other teacher's like, I like 705. and I get it. For me, the recommendation that I am putting together, at least this presentation, is if we step back from our own issues and really look at what's the research telling us, just kind of couch it in that. That's where this is coming from, and I will pass out to the school committee afterwards. To date, or since Friday, I have 21 people have emailed me, and I've emailed everybody back. I think the 2 that came in today, I don't think I got a chance to email the last one, but 21 people have emailed me about this. 12 of them were really like it. 7 were really don't like it. 2 of them were kind of don't like it, but could we meet somewhere in the middle? And where they're what their meet in the middle is really what that Project Citizen recommendation was. Could we look at 8:30 instead of 8:55? And so I'll kind of get to all of those. So since the Project Citizen presentation, oops, I forgot to advance my computer, but not you. Since the Project Citizen presentation back in 2012, there have been 2 really big studies, important studies that have come out. The first one is this huge 72-page summary that has come out from the University of Minnesota that looks at what has been the impact of later start times in 8 different high schools, 9,000 students, and that same thing that we're seeing. Academics have gone up, tardiness has gone down, less referrals to the school nurses, and then for me, I maybe this is because I'm dealing with a teen and a tween right now. I like this one thing in that report where it said 92% of the parents reported that their teenagers, when they got more sleep, were easier to live with. Trust me, I'm living that every day, and I think a lot of my admin team who have their own teenagers can understand that one as well. And then just a few weeks ago, there was I read a study from some researchers from Oxford and Harvard that put out a paper that looked at circadian rhythms in kids. And maybe this is the old biologist in me, really into circadian rhythms. And I was looking at that, and I thought that they had some nice little graphic that where they were just looking at, here's what the wake up, oops, keep forgetting. Yeah, here's,
I'm sure it looks lovely on your
screen. It looks great on the screen.
Let's get the barber now.
If we look in the study, they have a section, and it's like, okay, when the kids are roughly 10 years old, they're bouncing out of bed on average at 6:30. And again, I fully recognize not everyone's child is that way. I got an email from one mom today that said, I've got a teenager who is up at 6:30. They're kind of looking at what's the average teen, the average 10-year-old, and what they're finding is that 6:30 is this average wake up time. By the time puberty happens, and that's what the big twist is, and is that when puberty sets in, you see this shift from that 6:30 to 8 to 9, and what they're really getting at, if we really wanted to look at what's the best start time for high school students, they'd say the research would be 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is probably not so practical for a lot of reasons, but that's really, if you say, okay, let's give them time to wake up, let's give them time to get showered and dressed and eat breakfast and get on the bus and get to school. So you have this disconnect between where the research is and really where schools are. So in Massachusetts, and this is really what the Project Citizen students focused on. When they were giving their presentation in 2012, Hingham Public Schools was sort of known as the first school in Massachusetts to kind of go that way, and it was this big debate, got in the newspaper, and Hingham Public Schools essentially did what Monomoy did. It went from 7:20ish to 8 o'clock, and that was big news back in 2003. But also, right at the time that the Project Citizen presentation was going on, Nauset Public Schools was doing something more radical. Nauset went from a 7:25 start time to an 8:35, and the results that the Nauset administration has put out there, and that's well published since, is that there were instantaneous results. They saw a 53% drop in the number of kids failing, a 38% decrease in D's and F's, a decrease in the number of kids that were getting suspended over the course of time, and a decrease in tardiness to schools. And since 2012, those trends have held. Other communities, Duxbury, Sharon have moved to later start times. So I would actually say that Monomoy was in one of those sort of early adopters in many ways. There are other school districts, Mashpee's debating this, Barnstable, Wayland. There's a lot of districts that are looking at it. And then the Massachusetts legislature is starting to chime in on this. I suspect that in the not too distant future, there's going to be sort of a concerted push. And I think it's not unlike the issue that our Mr. Whitteran brought up on vacations. You're tied to each other in a lot of ways through interscholastic sports, and I would argue that I'd argue that if you really look at start times, interscholastic sports have been wagging the tail of the dog for a long time now. So if we look on Cape and if we look off Cape, the times are going to be looking really similar to this. The bulk of the elementary kids are starting their school days around 9 o'clock. The bulk of the high schools are starting their days around 7:30. And, and if we, go to the slide on when kids are ready, prime to learn, it's kind of off. We're having the elementary kids start later, and I kind of fondly miss these days on some level, but I remember when I first came to Monomoy, I had a fourth grader at the time, and every day it would be, I call her Frankenfoot, because I can hear her walking through the house, and it's like I hear her walking through the house, and she's up first and knocking on the door. Dad, are you awake? And I'm like, it's Saturday. Dad, you awake? But that was fourth grade. Now, Dad goes up, thumping up the stairs, and it's like, it's time to get up, and the best I get is talk to the hand, and that's halfway through sixth grade. I don't even want to say how my eighth grader is, but if I see him before 10 o'clock on most days, most weekends, it's probably lucky. So here we have this disconnect between kids' circadian rhythms and school start times. So how do we get to where we are today? When we initially, as a region, started to come together, the administrators, we were well aware of what the data for the last 2 decades has been telling us. And initially, we proposed to the high school councils that the high school would start later. And one of the things we heard loud and clear from the parents and the student athletes is, we're in the South Shore League. How do we do a late start when we've got to get out of school, go to Cohasset, go to our arch rival Hull, and we would have kids having to get out of class almost 2 hours before the end of school to travel up to some away games, and that wouldn't make a lot of educational sense either. So we shifted into this. Okay, let's go have the high school go first. But again, we're having sports drive this decision. I think for me, in my own thinking on this, I was meeting with all of the elementary teacher leaders and this elementary educational council. And Dawn King, who is one of the elementary teacher leaders at kindergarten, was at Harwich Elementary School, now over at Chatham Elementary School as a kindergarten teacher. She's like, why do we have high school sports, dictating what our start times are? And every single one of those teacher leaders was like, the kids are shot by 2 in the afternoon, and our school day is going on for another hour and a half. And I'm sitting there going, okay, let's walk this one forward. Dawn's kids in kindergarten are exhausted at 2, and we're losing an hour for kindergarten, and we're losing an hour every day, 180 hours, and then first grade, and then in second grade, and third grade, fourth grade. I mean, by the time the kids leave elementary school, there's a whole year's worth of time that they were primed to learn, but they weren't even at school yet. We hadn't dropped them off. They were still sitting home, watching their older siblings head out the door, kind of groggily, or in Bill's case, maybe your son's not out the door yet. It's Bill and I, talk about our sons, our high school age sons, and who didn't quite make it to school on time today, and that's a challenge here. So we had this issue with sports being a factor, but next year we're moving the Cape and Islands League, and by moving the Cape and Islands League, we're not going to be having to drive far away from most of our competitions. We can have a later start time and have our student athletes not miss more class. We can get out, we can get to the competitions, and like Nauset, we can have games that start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you might say, well, the proposal that you put out, you sent out to everybody has Monomoy getting, starting school at 8:55, not 8:35 like Nauset. It's 20 minutes later. But keep in mind, if we jump in our cars right now, Nauset's over 20 minutes further out the peninsula. I mean, so their competitors are going to take longer to get there, and they have to go drive longer to get to wherever they're going to be for their games. So we can manage the 20 minutes. It's a doable. I would argue it's a doable thing. Kind of getting back to Brian Whitgren's, well, why couldn't we all do some different vacation week? Yeah, I think sometimes it's going to take groups of superintendents to get together and say, okay, maybe we need to step back and stop the insanity. And so there's a memorandum of understanding right now between the Middlesex League superintendents that that's Winchester, Lexington, Belmont, some other communities saying, hey, let's just start planning by 2018. Let's get our high schools starting later, and try to really look at what's right in terms of the research for high schoolers, and focus on that rather than letting high school sports drive this as it has in the past. I've talked with Brendan Case, our athletic director. Even if we're the first to go this, for the Cape and Island leagues, it's doable. And again, it's like Nauset. Nauset's the only one in their league that's where they are in terms of the start time. But you just let your competitors know, this is what time we compete. This is what time the games are going to start here. A other factor when it comes to sports that I think we haven't been able to really realize yet. We have some, particularly in the fall, we have teams that were practicing, they were having 6 o'clock practices for field hockey this year. But that was because we only had the turf field. And when we go into next year, we have 3 fields that we're going to have in front of the building so that we can have 4 concurrent games or practices happening at the same time, not waiting to have every team, to have girls soccer, boys soccer, field hockey, all using the same field. So we're positioned both in terms of moving to a different league, but we're also positioned in terms of finally getting the fields out in front of this building to move to something that might make more sense for kids in terms of start time. So, the research out there is all about high school students, and as I said, if you really look at it and you go back to what that comment by Don King at this Elementary Educational Council, it's more than high school if we look at it for our district, and that's where I put. If you step back, this is a double disconnect. It's disconnected when we look at it from a high school perspective, but it's also disconnected when we look at it from an elementary perspective. So from an elementary start time, if we were to move forward and start an elementary school at 8 o'clock, we potentially pick up 900 hours of quality learning time for kids over the course of kindergarten to 4th grade. Meanwhile, at the high school level, if we look at that research and say, okay, students are going to be in a better place to learn if we start our schools later, if we start it closer to 8:55 rather than at 8 o'clock. Potentially, we're getting over the course of 8th grade to 12th grade 900 hours of better learning time for high school students. And I also think that for high school students, we also maybe are going to preempt some behaviors that that aren't so great. So kids compensate, and there's a number of high school students that compensate for for this early start time by caffeinating. And I don't know if it's just commercialism in our society, but I never remember as a high school student kids coming to class with coffee. I didn't know any teenagers that drank coffee. And when I ran a high school, that's where the kids were heading. They'd be walking out the door, Mr. Cartman, you want me to grab you a coffee on the way? I'm like, that's, but I think that's what we're seeing, is that, we're seeing teens turn towards caffeine and stimulants to kind of help mitigate some of the sleep deprivation. So, what I've put out is just a recommendation that's based on the research. A recommendation that's based on the research, and the recommendation that really flows out of a position paper put out by the American Academy of Pediatrics, which states that middle school and high school students. So I know that the research, they focus on high school, but it talks to middle school and high school students would benefit by having a start time after 8:30 for all of the reasons that I've mentioned and that are in the research. And it really would make a lot of sense then if we were to do that, to not say, okay, we're going to start our elementary school that much later, but to really look at what the prime time is for elementary students and have them start earlier. In terms of some of the feedback that's come my way, there have been people who have said, hey, maybe something like the start time that Project Citizen initially put out there, in 8:30. Could we look at that? And my answer is, sure we could. But we have to keep in mind what that means. So starting the middle school and high school at 8:30 means starting the elementary schools roughly at 7:30, which means that some of the bus runs to pick up the kids for 7:30 is that in Harwich and in Chatham on the peripheries, there are going to be kids in late November when it's really dark standing out at a bus stop at 6:40 in the morning. And when we put the district together, one of the reasons that we came with at 8 o'clock is that it takes about an hour for our buses to do their initial run. And we deliberately made a decision that we didn't want to have anybody jumping on a bus until 7. So
Circadian rhythm is just occurring. The school start times as they have been landed where they are to have it so that students aren't going to be on buses prior to maybe Clapperville. So that students aren't getting on buses prior to 7. But this has been endorsed by the National Center for Disease the Center for Disease Control, the National Sleep Foundation, and even the U.S. Secretary of Education has really said, hey, this is a direction that schools should go. And I will fully acknowledge that that the thing that tends to kind of get in the way in the conversations, tends to be with sports. And today, a parent emailed saying, hey, I'm concerned if you have later start times that the sports would have to go and start first. That you have before school sports practices. And the response is that would defeat the purpose. And they said, well, NOSIT does that. And Brendan followed up with the NOSIT athletic director, and that's not the case. That sports would happen after school. It doesn't mean that nothing happens in school prior to 8:55. If you start a high school at 8:55, there are a lot of great things that happen, and there may be things that people decide to do before school, but that your formal sports program
would happen, would happen after school. So I'll just kind of leave it out there. As I said, it's a conversation. It's not a decision, but this is what the research is saying makes sense for kids. And I would say that for our district, we're poised with moving to Cape and Islands, with getting those fields back and usable for next year out front, that we can afford to do this and have a vibrant sports program and have kids get the sleep they need and get the educational benefits that other districts that have gone this way have seen.
Go ahead. Can you go back to the slide that talks about the ideal sleeping times or starting times? Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually, my question has to do with the middle school. You've put the middle school with the high school.
Good point.
Wow.
Yes, you do. Say no more. But you have the middle school with the high school, I assume, because that's the way it is now. Fifth graders are under 11, right? We have our middle school is 5, 6, and 7.
So I would say I didn't put the middle school with the high school.
Well, in your proposal.
I'm following what the American Association of Pediatrics has recommended. And I think the way they would look at it, and I think we see that at the middle school, there's a huge difference between a fifth grader and a seventh grader. And there's a lot of biological things and biological changes and sleep changes, as I'm experiencing firsthand with my tween and now 13-year-old, that happen in that stretch of time. So there's that piece. And one of the other, one of the bits of feedback that I've gotten, I would say probably more, the most negative feedback voices I've gotten have been in that middle school year, because or middle school range. And I think there are a lot of times in a lot of different places on it, but it's like, could we have our own fleet of buses to start when it might make more sense? And I have a couple emails that I've gotten from different people related to that. The challenge we have is the district has 13 buses. We have 10 that go to Harwich Elementary School, 3 that go to Chatham Elementary School to do runs, and then we have 7 of those head off to the middle school, 6 of those head off to the high school. So we have if we wanted to do and lump middle school with elementary, we would have to have 7 more buses, because we would be launching all of those at the same time, and that's a cost of about $70,000 a bus.
Well, who rides the buses now? I mean, there's elementary school buses earlier or later, right? And the high school and middle school buses, the middle school kids and the high school kids ride together?
They ride on the same buses as the elementary kids were on, but they ride separately. So
There's 6 buses that are unique to the high school and 7 buses that are unique to the middle school.
they loop through the towns.
So the
So
7
the problem with having the middle school start at the same time as the elementary school is a busing problem.
It's a busing problem, and if I again root this with where the research is, the recommendation from the American Association of Pediatrics is that the middle schoolers ultimately should be lumped with the high schoolers and start after 8:30.
Depending on what their definition of middle school is.
But I argue that they're I think that no matter where you break it, if the 5th graders were at the middle school, 6 and 7 would still be in their age range.
Okay.
Hypothetically, if we were shooting for one or the other for this coming September, what would we have to do to make that happen? About a month or 2 ago, we had our math team come in, and we were fortunate enough to have enough lead time to consider it and then say, for the added summer and the preparation and the purchase of texts, why don't we get ourselves a penny in for a pound and buy the whole thing. And so we voted, yes, let's do that. And off our math program goes in the hopes that 2 or 3 years from now, we see some PARC or MCAS scores that are improved. Well, that kind of ties in with this. I'm intrigued, and I don't know how else you get community input beyond what you've done with a couple of 20, 30 staff that were interested enough to email you. But I think we can delay this and go discuss it all next year, or we can figure out a way between now and May to get not a consensus, but at least the input from the greater community, and then come back again and vote on it to launch it.
So, good question. So the last slide of what I sent out to families it's something that we could make this decision in June and launch it in September. It's not an undoable thing. We would just need to know from families who needs the support either before school or after school to have this happen. So there are middle school families right now that drop off shortly after 7 o'clock. If the middle school's starting later, those families are still going to have that need for support. So we just need to know who needs the support so that on our end, we have staff supervision for kids that are coming and getting dropped off before school, the same way that we have at both Robin and Sam's building. There are families that, right around 7 o'clock start having a need to drop off because parents are working, and so there's a morning program. It's just instead of having morning programs beefed up at the elementary schools, we're looking at what do we need to do before school for the middle school, and what do we need to have in place before school at the high school. And but then on the other side of the day, it's working with Monomoy Community Services and Monomoy Community Learning Center and making sure that they're hiring extra staff to go and support more families. So the elementary families are going to need more support. We'll need to have more staffing. We'll probably have to run in Chatham. The program would need to run more out of the elementary school initially for that first hour or two, and then move across the street. But it's a doable thing on that end. When it comes to the high school after school, it's really working with Brendan, just saying, hey, this is when we compete. We play our games at 4 o'clock, and we may need to, particularly in the fall. Fall gets a little tricky when it comes to light, but we're not any different than Nauset. There's one lit field in Nauset. You have to go and get creative on when you're having those games as you get into the late fall, when you need to make sure you have enough light to have your soccer game or field hockey game if you don't have that the game on a lit field.
Steve, a follow-up, and you probably have considered this. Would it make any sense to contact the Chronicle and have you and Carla, or our principal, the 3 principals, sit and get an interview that would cover this PowerPoint and have them commit to put it in the Chronicle so that it could be addressed by readers in Chatham and Howard. And I'm not, that's number one, whether or not the end of the article would say, please contact your school, or any questions regarding this consideration, contact your local school committee member.
Terry.
Yes.
Terry
of East Howard. That's a suggestion.
Actually, Kat Schmidt was I think the second person I sent the presentation to at the Chronicle. But I definitely want to make sure that people react, and I fully know that they're going to be all over the place on this, and I think at some point either the superintendent or the superintendent school committee need to wrestle with what's the right thing to do for our district and our kids. And I was, if you read some of the links that I have up there on more local news stories, there's one school system where where they were wrestling with this issue, and they had sort of the blue ribbon community panel, and, you know, you're now 6-7 years later, they're still at the 7:15 start time at the high school, and you know, that's what they felt was right for their community. You know, I'm just looking at this, you know, if we look at learning time, and you know, it's, at the end of the day, it's when can we have, you know, quality learning time for students? I think Don King nailed it. It's like, hey, you know, we shouldn't be having sports really have the tail wag the dog. Let's really look at where the research is.
I think that provides a good example of whoever you were using as an example to 7 years later, they stayed with the 7:15 start time because that's what's right for our community. I spoke with a group of people to ask their opinion about this, changing the start times, and they were overwhelmingly against it. 2 of the people said it's going to really mess them up because they have part-time jobs, and changing the start times is really going to screw it up. One of them was a high school student who said, and it's anecdotal, and, you know, I don't know the truth of it, I'm just saying what I was told, that the majority of the kids at the high school do not favor the change. One of the other people of the group that I spoke to said the middle school is not in favor of the change either. I think it's important to get information and feedback from all the community members as to what's going to work for the community. I understand we have the research, and that's important as well, but, you know, maybe it won't work for our community. I'm not saying either way.
Well, there is a commitment that this is not a fast process, and that we need to have the conversations
Yes.
across the board. So,
I'm glad that it's not a fast process, yeah.
any
You have
other
to sleep on it.
Yes.
One of my largest concerns, my biggest concerns, and I emailed this to Scott after the presentation went out, was that there's been so much change with the start times, and it all is very logical. That, because I was a part of that, or present at that presentation, I was part of, with the 8th graders, and, you know, very gung-ho, and let's change it to 8:30, and I remember the students, so then when we opened up the high school, you know, the idea was to start the high school at 8:30, or 9. I don't remember that part. Whatever the initial idea was to open the high school, the students didn't like that, so they pushed it back for logical reasons for the sports. So we settled on the 8 a.m. start time for the high school and the middle school. So perfectly logical time. And this is a seemingly logical time to start to look at the conversation again, to move it later as per the research and other examples going into the Cape and Islands League. But my concern is that we were doing this, and then we're doing this, and now we're doing this, and then, well, in 2 years, are we gonna look and say, you know what, that didn't work? That's one of my biggest concerns. There are a couple of comments that people made dealing with after-school time and having less after-school time and more after-school time. I can see it going both ways. You know, just in my house, I have a 2nd grader and a 6th grader, and the 2nd grader is that 6:15 kid. He's raring to go, and he's downstairs playing, and he's down there playing for 2.5 hours until it's time to go to school. We leave the house at 8:45 to get to school. And the 6th grader, I'm dragging out of bed at 7:15 to get her to school so we can leave. So I can, you know, living that, I can see the advantage of letting her sleep until 8 and still get to school on time, and he's out the door and gone. And then I also can see the benefits on the other end. After school, he comes home at 3:30, 3:45, and he's exhausted. You know, he's done for the day. And trying to get activities for the elementary school kids after school, they're either rushing from school right to the activity to get it in before dinner, or, they don't get it at that time, and it's right in the middle of dinner time, which is tougher for the elementary school set. So basically, I'm just saying that I can see both sides, and I can see that the change and the change and the change would not be a good thing. But I also could see some great benefits to switching them to make the high school and middle school later. I would like to see more community. I like how you did the presentation and you said, give me your feedback. And I think that's, I'm not sure about asking for feedback from the Chronicle, because I can see grandparents and community members replying and saying, back when I was in school, we started at 7 o'clock and it was fine. And that's great, and we're living in different times, and we have kids that have more activities after school than, they had jobs as well, but I think kids have more things that they're doing after school now than in previous times. So these are my 5,000 cents.
Just to say what Nancy said in the beginning, the other comment that this group made was that, didn't we just change our start times? I feel like we've just changed them over and over again, so that was something that I heard as well.
Sure.
There's so much that's been said, and I agree with everything that I've heard. I do empathize with Dawn King and what her comments are. I have a grandson who's in kindergarten, and I pick him up one day a week, and he's like, can I help you to the car? And I do see a lot of kids barely making it out the door. So I don't know, we earlier spoke about the vacation. This seems like, because of people's work time and because of a lot of variations, it's much more complicated than I thought when I entered the meeting.
Right?
Well, I don't know where I stand. I mean, I'm very interested in the input from the community and how it's going to affect the most people, and what people can adjust and what people can't adjust. But a comment occurs to me that, generally speaking, I would assume parents have more control over elementary school kids than they do over high school kids. I mean, when I think about the high school kids starting later and going later, the idea is that they can sleep later. So, I mean, the other possibility is they'll just stay up later and still not get any more sleep, because it's very hard to control what time your high school student goes to bed, especially with the smartphones under the covers. But with an elementary school kid, that pretty much, I assume, for most parents, they can get them to go to bed more or less when they want them to, and get them up when they want to. So you can make an argument that the proposal will benefit the elementary school kids significantly, and you can control their behavior to get the advantage, as opposed to the fact that you might not be able to get quite as much of an advantage to the high school kids by changing the time. But that early education obviously provides a significant basis for the later education, and having the kids lose 180 hours of schooling, the elementary school kids lose 180 hours of education every year, that strikes a note for me. Off the top of my head, I don't have an opinion yet, but that's what occurs to me.
What strikes me, if it's valid, is the Nauset Regional High School data. If that neighbor pulled off an 8:35, is that correct, whatever time they started the high school a year or two ago, and they're willing to list publicly that 5 or 6 actions of kids all seem to be very positive, have resulted in, the last comment was that it continues. That's worth looking into. I too would like to see, we're never going to get unanimity, but we certainly would get as much input from both communities, Howard, and I don't know how you control that with grandparents, but the Chronicle article might generate more input for those of us who at some point probably have to make a vote. So, and it's not an easy one because you don't want 4 or 5 changes within a year or two. On the other hand, it looks to me like the research in the past several years points towards at least an 8:35 or 5 minutes to 9, or 10 minutes to 9, which would be dictated by the number of buses. Makes some sense to me on both ends of the spectrum, the elementary/middle and the high school. So
Probably get more feedback from posting on Facebook than putting it in the Chronicle. I mean, I'm kind of serious about that.
Whatever, well, you know, whatever, I'll leave that to somebody else, but.
You posted all the positives from NASA. Can we ask them what any negatives were? Were there any pitfalls that they saw at the same time? I'm sure there had to be a few. And nobody wants to admit those, they want to go with the positives. And as for changing the times again, my opinion is when we did it the last time, we disregarded an earlier start time for the elementary school. And that's truly what we're looking at. So it's not a change for change, it's a change to benefit a whole set of students. So depending upon the feedback, did you wish to say something?
Yes. As principal of the middle school, that,
Yeah, sure.
Make it official.
I'd be delighted.
So we can all hear.
Mark Wilson, principal of the middle school. All I would ask is we deliberate the change in start times, that we be consistent with ourselves. When we look at the data that was presented here this evening, we look at elementary students, and any student that's under the age of 11 should have an earlier start time. All the 5th grade students who enter my building are generally 10 years old, and if we're going to look at that research and hold ourselves honest to it, we should be considerate about whether those students would benefit from the earlier start time, and not look at them as a group of students that are at the middle school, and so we're going to treat them differently simply because they're housed in a school that's grades 5 through 7. Right now, we recognize that the start times are, in general, dictated by athletics that have been in place for a long time, and has required the high schools to start early enough to be able to get their student athletes out to sports. And we decide that's somewhat arbitrary to really dictate the whole district's kind of approach to our start times on the basis of that. I would say it's arbitrary as well to start the start times on the basis of how many buses we have. So it's the same sort of conversation. What's best for our kids? What's the best start time? And is the middle school the most complicated kind of conversation in this equation because we have a set of students that straddle 2 different circadian rhythms, if I can quote the language from tonight, and can we find a way to structure how we operate so that we are true to the data that we're presenting to the community to consider? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other discussion?
I wanted to kind of echo some of the sentiments that you guys have thrown out there, and also, I guess, just offer a high school perspective. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak. My name's Doug Walsh. I'm an English teacher here at Monomoy. I teach 8th and 9th grade English, and I might be teaching a section of, I might be teaching an elective to upperclassmen next year. I have to admit that I have serious reservations about this schedule change. While I realize that my students' circadian rhythms are in fact a legitimate concern, I also want to raise the point that flipping schedules between the elementary schools and the high school next year will signify the inception of the 4th schedule Chatham and Harwich High School students and staff members will have faced over the course of 4 academic years, which is a lot. Last year we were forced to grapple with, as you all know, with a legitimate and, to put it lightly, disconcerting budget crisis that affected not only our staff members but also our students. This combined with the fact that MRHS is still trying to forge an identity and a culture due to its recent construction are significant factors that have affected all that study, learn, work, and grow here. Although I might not know many of you personally, I hope that you, like the other staff members that I work with, consider this plan carefully and deliberately before you come to a decision. It's the least that all of our great students and staff members who give so much of themselves to the school community deserve. Once again, thank you sincerely for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
What are the next steps?
Should we put this on our agenda for the next time as well? and perhaps seek some, you know,
Public comment.
affirmatively seek some public comment for our next meeting, like get the word out to people that we'd like to hear from them. This woman,
Am I allowed to say something?
pardon?
Can I say something?
Can you come up here?
Oh.
You don't mind, do you?
This just.
Well, it's not public comment.
I know.
I'm really not comfortable with this. Hi.
Hi.
I'm a mom of a future second grader, and my last will finally come out of daycare next year and into kindergarten. So the one comment, and maybe the finances of it is not an aspect, but for me, like, I don't know if you understand, like, families who need the after-school program, like whether the school day ends at 2:30 or 3:30, they'll regardless need the after-school program. That is not my case. I come back in time to get I would be getting back on time to get both of my kids off the bus, but if this happens, it's after school or I find someone else, and the after school would basically keep ongoing the expense that I've been having with daycare when I was finally, after years of it, really looking forward to be out of that zone. And so financially, I might be the only one in that case where 2:30 or 3:30 makes a huge difference. I don't know. I hear that nurses' shifts end at the Cape Cod Hospital at 3. Again, it's in time to make it back here. I don't know. It's just, and it's a comment that I haven't heard, and it's huge financially on families where both parents are working, and I am, you might have picked up I'm not from here.
South Howard?
No, much further.
Sounds good to me.
No, much further away. But it's hard to feel financially, like being financially punished for having young kids. And it is a concern that I would like you guys to think about, because for me it changes everything. $6,000 a month, $600 a month is $6,000 a year, and it's basically another daycare expense for the next 4 years. So I've had a knot in my stomach that I wanted to unknot. So thanks for listening.
Good job.
Thank you.
Let's try to get more people next time. Open the can of worms.
Well, sorry, but it's like almost 11, and if I have to do this again till almost 11, I might pass out. So I want to do it this week while I'm here.
Well, our public comment is almost the first thing we do at every meeting.
Sorry. I'll be very, very brief. I would have a question with regard to the further information that you're going to get as to how it affected the Nauset elementary students, and whether or not we think that there's a massive enough difference, because I think there is personally between 7:05, I think is the time. I don't know what time Nauset starts. It's markedly earlier than 8 though. So bearing that in mind, is 7:45? Yeah, well, so I guess not that much different. So I would have some questions about that, as well as if there's data on high school students and how it affects homework performance and things like that if you push the end time later. So that's all. Just looking for a little info.
Any further discussion here? So we'll put the word out to all the parents that we're looking for the feedback.
Respectfully comment on that, given that the meetings run this late, I think the fact that we don't see a lot of parent representation, so I don't know if it can be put on the agenda first, or for the public comment, just to be sure that parents can attend.
Public comment is almost the first thing we do.
Just to make sure that parents know, because I think it's.
People have other obligations, if they show up 10 minutes late to the meeting, they might miss that section.
I just think it's a hardship for parents.
Yeah, and it hasn't been discussed yet, so.
Yeah, just anecdotally, I wouldn't have said anything because it hadn't been discussed, so as a parent, I didn't know. Sorry.
Speaking from around the room can't be picked up as part of the meeting. So if you, this is out of what we normally do, but if you want to speak, you have to come to the podium to make the statement, because for those of us on the committee that have hearing problems, it's an issue, and for the camera to pick it up, it becomes an issue. Sharon?
Stephen, I know that public comment's right at the beginning, but since we're soliciting information from people, could we make an exception or put open, have a comment time when we bring this up during the meeting? The early
We
break?
have that.
Yes, I know, but could we formally do that the next time?
For the next one.
Let's say historically, we've allowed public comment after we've had our conversation.
Okay.
That's usually been our tradition.
Any further conversation or discussion? Then we will move on to the Monomoy Regional High School Program of Studies. And I just want to say to Mr. Burkhead that we appreciate the presentation that was given to us last time by the department head, and it was very informative.
Thank you. So, in your folders, there's the program of studies that Bill gave you in advance of that presentation. Last night, his staff did a great job of having a forum for parents to talk to them about what the flow of and options are in each of the academic departments. So he had his department heads and members of staff from each of the departments. One of the things I just want to loop back to the presentation from the science department is when they were presenting, they were talking about options. And one of the key things that we were looking at last week and all throughout this year is physics. And can we find the right physics teacher to help move us into what they were referring to as a physics first approach, which would be to have physics taught as a core 9th grade course. So part of the challenge at the time was trying to make sure that we hire and land that right person. Well, we had posted last year for physics, and we didn't have the right person come about. And this year we found the right guy to bring here and couple with another teacher to position the district to go physics first. So yesterday, Bill presented, or Bill's staff presented the program of studies and presented as the grid for science, the one that is that's sort of separate for your packet. And this is what we'll be sort of educating the parents on. They started last night. Is that in 8th grade we would have an interdisciplinary oceanography. So 8th grade science is a little bit of biology, a little bit of physics, a little bit of chemistry. But given where our curriculum is at the middle school and just the natural environment that we live in, to really root 8th grade science, we would tie it into a interdisciplinary oceanography curriculum in 8th grade. 9th grade, we would move away from what has been a 2-year biology or continuum. So we've done essentially a macro biology, that would look at more sort of ecology, human biology, and then the following year follow up with a microbiology, which is looking at cells and genetics and this and that. And a biology curriculum is one that you can spend years really specializing in. The problem with where our science curriculum and our staffing has been is that it's been very biology focused. Students could come here and take biology. You could keep taking various forms of biology and not leave here as a graduate with with a well-rounded scientific literacy, not understand anything about physics, potentially not get chemistry. So, so what we want to do is to shift that science focus to be one where we're guiding students towards scientific literacy. We would shift staffing and be hiring physics teachers to teach a ninth grade physics. On the backside of this are just some of the benefits on moving towards a physics first in ninth grade. It really provides students that hands-on applied opportunity to use math. Districts that have gone this route, you support what's happening in your math curriculum because you're using it, you're applying that math. So we would then in ninth grade teach physics. 10th grade would be a one-year biology course with opportunities for students to take AP biology, anatomy and physiology as electives in subsequent years, so they can get that more depth. Steer students towards chemistry as juniors, and then to look at that breadth of science electives. So the shift here, based on the hires that we've been able to make since the last school committee meeting, is that we're now positioned to launch and do this physics first in ninth grade.
Cool.
This sounds really good to me. I'm wondering what the impact will be when we take our, whatever it is, new level MCAS. Is the state going in that direction?
Right now, students would take the biology MCAS, so they would take it at the end of 10th grade. There is a physics MCAS, so our ninth graders would take the physics MCAS in ninth grade when there is no other physics or no other MCAS test. And an advantage of doing that is not that it not only does it get the science required MCAS out of the way for students, but it also allows us some triage. If a student is not successful in that physics MCAS, you now have a small set of students that biology is high stakes for. Or were they close enough that we need to just give them a little extra support to get them up and over and to retake the physics class? So we're actually giving students two opportunities that maybe they aren't going to be successful in physics, but they can take a second MCAS in 10th grade in biology and actually have opportunities twice in two different subjects. So I think it's going to be beneficial to students from that standpoint.
Any other questions?
Other than that, the program as you received is the same.
Then everyone had an opportunity to review the program of studies. Anybody have any questions on it?
I have a question. It looks great. There was one thing here I didn't quite understand, and that was that the honors class, it looks like you need a 90 to get into an honors class, and AP class is higher than that. So I wondered what the grade score was to get into a AP course.
Can you answer that one, Bill?
Yeah, you want me to go up?
And I wondered how many you had to get, kids that would qualify to get into these.
So can you repeat the question?
Okay, it says under honors level courses, it says, in order for students to be eligible to take honors courses, they must obtain a 90 or better in the previous college prep course for that subject, and an 80 in the previous honors course. So because it's so high, just to get into the honors class, I wondered how many could qualify for that. And it doesn't say any number, like 90 to get into AP.
Right.
So is it easier to get into AP than honors? Or
No, it's not. But the 80 and 90 guidelines, we typically go by teacher recommendations for all our courses, and there is flexibility with the goal of, getting as many kids higher up that are ready and willing to do so. So those are guidelines, and for AP, it's typically teacher recommendation, students' commitment to the college level courses, and the majority, I would say overwhelmingly, have to come from an honors class or a previous AP course. But it is open enrollment for all our classes. And we do have, after the teacher recommendation, we do have a new process that we started this year that's been very effective, where if the parent looks at that and disagrees with the teacher's recommendation, there's a process that gets the guidance counselor, the department head, and teachers involved to have a conversation, and then the parent has that right to override that and place their child where they believe is the best fit for them. So ultimately, the parents and the children have the say with education on, this is where we think your child stands, you know them better than us, possibly, and we'll go with that. So it's an open conversation for all our courses.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And if I may just comment on the, we left one slide out on the circadian rhythm for 40-plus men. I'm typically in bed at 10 and up at 4:30, so late start time tomorrow would be great. Thank you.
We understand. So moved. So, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the program of studies for 2016-2017 for Monomoy Regional High School.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just a question about the business courses. I noticed there are the accounting one, sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, and personal finance. Would we be adding any other business courses like marketing back at any point?
Good possibility, but
I-
not in this.
Yeah, I think there were 5 different business classes that were on a slide in the presentation last night. That, so there's a global finance course, a money and sort of a different twist on personal finance coming from the history department, and then
They're in different departments.
yeah. But I think all it takes is somebody developing a marketing class and, saying, hey, this is something I'd like to run for it to move forward.
Any other discussion? Motion on the table is to approve the Monomoy Regional High School Program of Studies. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Subcommittee reports? Hearing none, moving on to superintendent's report.
Hearing none?
I'll be quick about this. I'll be working with the administrators and wrapping up a draft for that strategic plan for the next meeting. We'll also be scheduling a series of forums. I called them parent and culture forums, but I think it may be culture and start time forums as well. But I think it's a natural fit, because the conversation on start time came out of those initial strategic planning conversations, and that's where this all evolved from. And in many ways, it fits into what is that culture that you want to develop within the school district. Just in terms of staffing, hiring, updates.
Before you leave that,
Sure.
remember you're going to let me know when there's a strategic plan meeting?
I shall.
Okay. So there hasn't been any?
No, you are welcome to join us over the vacation too, if you're around.
I appreciate that.
Enjoy Wednesday with us. So in your packet, I just wanted to do a quick little follow-up on where we are with different positions. There's a globe ad that we ran back in, I'm trying to remember, was this February? That was when we were searching for a physics teacher, looking for an academic center coordinator, looking for the interim director of technology, special education teachers in each of the schools at elementary, middle, and high school, a middle school math teacher, and that's because the math teacher, one of the math teachers at the middle school is sliding to the high school to teach the business courses. A middle school English teacher and elementary teachers. This is to fill an opening in kindergarten in Sam's building. So the second page has, or the back page has just, what we were actually looking at in terms of applicants. There's the academic center coordinator. There's 18 people had applied for that. Something like a physics teacher. Seven applied for a physics position, and that was up 6. We did a cold email out to anybody that was in School Spring with a physics certification. We only had one in there initially, and we're able to get the physics teacher that we found really on a outreach through this, and you'll see the elementary. There's a large number of applicants that you'll get when you have an elementary posting. So it all depends on what postings you have to the depth and breadth of the of that pool. In terms of, I think our last meeting was asked, just what does that academic center coordinator look like? In the presentation that the guidance department provided at the last school committee meeting, they were describing the academic center coordinator, which would really sort of fall under their realm. Students that struggle would be identified, and their guidance counselors would work with this academic center coordinator to provide them supports. What we're, and the way that they explained it last night to parents as well is, we're seeing a number of students, particularly 8th graders, come to a high school with some organizational challenges. They're not quite ready for high school, and they need some extra organizational supports, and that's where we see maybe the bulk of this coordinator's work is helping 8th graders and in some cases 9th graders find success in high school. So they would be working on the clinical level. Joan would call these. They would be doing tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. That sort of falls under this response to intervention RTI model. That just what you're providing progressive supports for students. So you initially try to support the student within the classroom, and then you try to do it in a sort of almost a sort of a special sort of additional services in this tier 2, and then maybe it's a more intense one-on-one. How that model plays out is really going to be a conversation that happens between our incoming director of student services when Melissa McGuire gets here and works with the counseling staff and the administration. We see this individual as teaching classes that that will be very much sort of study skills based, teaching kids how to be successful as students. But we also see the right person for this is somebody who connects with students really across the spectrum, because to have this program, I think, really thrive, that it needs to be somebody who connects well with students who struggle, but who also can connect with those upper level students who they can bring in as tutors. So this is somebody who's really going to engage the tutoring strength that you have within high school. So we sent our crew up to Wayland High School to see a very effective model they have in place for this this type of academic center coordination, and to come back with ideas on how we can implement that sort of model in a similar size school. So I think in many ways it will evolve as over time, but it definitely will address a need that we see. I think a challenge with having 8th graders here at the high school is that some aren't quite ready for that type of sort of high school responsibility and just helping students who are struggling to be successful.
Scott, when do we write the job description for that?
What's that?
When do we write the job description?
When will we?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one that will evolve. I think until we hire someone and have Melissa here, I think it's in concept, but how many classes they're going to teach is still to be determined.
Honestly, I understand the Melissa comment because the people that I've seen that would best do something like that, even though these students aren't special needs students, but the people that are special needs teachers, a lot of those people have the skills.
Right.
I think it kind of depends on the skill set that they come in with.
So in terms of, so we have not hired that position yet. We have hired the middle school the middle school English teacher. We've hired a physics teacher and have somebody to pair with that, with that physics teacher. We've hired a middle school special education teacher. So we have elementary and high school special ed still to hire. So there's a number of hires, and we have, there still will be a few people I will assume that will still indicate that they're going to retire. So there will be some additional hiring, but we're in a good place now.
Any of these internal hires, or are they all external hires?
So far, outside of Jim's position, they have been hires from out.
Any other questions?
How many positions are open in the special education area?
At the moment, we have 2 posted, so there's elementary and high school to fill.
So have some been filled?
There was hired a middle school person yesterday that was sent to me. She was spectacular.
So multiple positions at elementary, middle, and high school levels is 1 at each. So we've got 1 out of 3. The other 2 are in process. Okay. So,
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, good.
Hold that thought.
Put that up for next time.
second.
Sure.
Second,
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
you already did.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I won't even ask for an opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it, we're done.
That's what we've done.